Chapter 2080. Aunt Shi knew that Xiao Jian's story wasn't completely true. People in the dream world would always act recklessly and couldn't completely control themselves, so there was no need to go into detail. However, she really wanted to know who this sword cultivator was. She really wanted to talk to this person. The universe had changed so much that some things needed to be prepared for a rainy day. Actions needed to be taken and cooperation needed to be cooperated. They had to communicate clearly so that they wouldn't be confused when the last era changed. You mean that the last boat of people reached the other side? Xiao Qiu was extremely intelligent and immediately realized what Aunt Shi was referring to. You mean that this person went to the forest fox path to find the way to the worryless road? In other words, he will come here sooner or later. Well, it's very possible. This can explain why I can't find him. Now, if the cultivators of the main world wanted to come to the worryless road, they could only do so through the Heavenly Fox clan. One of the most important ways was that after completing the test in the Forest Fox fantasy realm, they would automatically get the way. The Heavenly Fox clan had long wanted to cut off this line and make it quieter. But nature had its own rules, and they couldn't completely control it. They could only try to reduce the number of people who passed the test. This was also the reason why the sea monsters were constantly dangerous on the rock's voyage. The existence of the wood shell was an important part of the interception, but it was gone now. Aunt Shi nodded. It's only one possibility. Well, you've been running around for a long time. Go and rest. Don't tell anyone about the changes in the forest fox path. I and your other grandmothers need to think about it. Xiao Jian left. Her curiosity wasn't satisfied, but she couldn't help it. Her realm wasn't high enough. It wasn't good for her to know a lot of things. And now, the most annoying thing was that the sea rabbit was also coming over. What should she do? Would it recognize her? If there was a day when it asked to wash its stomach with her, what should she do? Xiao Jian was restless, but her Aunt Shi was even more restless than her. They gathered a few respected elders of the tribe and discussed what had happened in the Spirit Fox's mirage. There was too little information and it happened in the dreamlands, so there was not enough evidence to prove it. Granny Zhu, the oldest eight-tailed celestial fox, suggested, "There's no need to come up with a plan right now. There are too many secrets in the world of cultivators to be known. Thinking about them will only hurt your mind. There's still some time before the end of the epoch. We can try to contact Xuanyuan's sword vein through certain channels. Wouldn't it be much better to communicate with them than to guess here and there? Lu Xiaoyi is in charge of Xinyuan right now. I don't think we need to look for anyone else. We can just look for him. This matter can be put on the agenda." After tens of thousands of years, the karma planted by Li Jun has begun to blossom and bear fruit. It is also time to clarify our attitudes towards each other. Another eight-tailed elder, Elder Jing, nodded. Thanks to Li Jun's help, our celestial fox clan has the fortune to descend to the mortal world today. This is a personal friendship. From a fair point of view, we also need to rely on the power of human orthodoxy in the changes of the universe. Now it seems that the sword vein is reliable and has a relationship with us. I'll tell you the truth. We can't turn to other orthodoxies. Everything in the world of cultivators is about benefits. The so-called new allies are all coming for benefits. Under such a situation, our friendship with the sword vein is very precious. The problem is not whether to ally with the sword vein, but whether the sword vein can produce a person who can stand shoulder to shoulder with Li Jun. If not, even the sword vein may not be able to stand out in the new epoch, let alone us. Lu Xiaoyi, right? Get to know him, understand him, and see his potential. Even if he is not as domineering as Li Jun, half of him is still good. Then we will know whether our celestial fox clan is going all in or leaving some leeway. When the universe was changing and the epochs were changing, every domain, every orthodoxy, and every race had their own countermeasures. The Heavenly Fox clan was very far-sighted. They knew that it would not be good for their clan if they got involved too early. Their direction was unclear, and their future was unclear. If they were exposed too early, it would be easy for them, who were already very special among the demonic beasts, to be targeted by all. They hoped to wait and see clearly. In fact, they would not act until they saw the hair. This window of time was very difficult to grasp. If they were exposed too early, they would be inexplicably suppressed. If they made a decision too late, they would be unprepared. The plan was hasty, and it required a lot of insight and judgment. However, the celestial foxes had wisdom. They were confident that they could make the right choice at the right time. In their view, it was not the right time yet. Only 13 great paths had collapsed, and only 30% of them had collapsed. They still needed to wait patiently. However, in the process of waiting, some sudden changes might affect the process. They were very clear about the horror of variables. Therefore, when they heard that Mu Bei and Lin Fox's illusion had been killed, they immediately realized that the sword vein was speeding up. Since they planned to follow in the footsteps of the sword vein, they had to make changes. Therefore, they came up with the suggestion. However, they did not want to make full contact with the sword vein. They only wanted to make contact with the leader of the sword vein in advance, that shitstirrer. Maybe he would come, maybe he would not. They wanted to be more proactive. Aunt Chi nodded. To a certain extent, the relationship between the celestial foxes and the sword vein fell on her. The little foxes below were not clear about this, but the big foxes here were well aware of the situation at that time. This was a very strange alliance. It was held together by Aunt Chi and that swordsman. It was a rare alliance that placed personal relationships above the overall situation. What was even more unsettling was that the swordsman was no longer around. Then, was the alliance between them still firm? In theory, it was still there. However, in reality, it was hard to say. Especially now that the leader was Lu Xiaoyi. His attitude was especially important. I will arrange to make contact with the Xinyuan sword faction, but this will take time. You all know that the swordsman is not at home. So, this matter is settled, right? Since everyone is here today, why don't we solve the problem at our doorstep? Since we want to participate in the general trend of the universe, we have to show the ability of the celestial foxes. Otherwise, we won't be allies, but a burden. Those human demigods at our doorstep have been here for a long time. Those who know will understand that we don't want the situation to escalate. Those who don't know will think that we are afraid of them. Before we make contact with the sword vein, we need to clean up our own troubles. No one likes a bunch of troublesome allies. We are like that, and the sword vein is the same. The big foxes all became serious. Regarding this point, it had always been a thorn in their hearts. Now, they planned to pull it out. It was just a matter of time. They were just waiting for an opportunity. Aunt Chi had been holding back from making a move before, but for some reason, she had changed her mind now. Chapter 2081. The activity of the human half-immortals in the path of forgetfulness was still at the stage of a peaceful demonstration. There were many reasons for this. The main reason was that the small number of human half-immortals were not a threat to the heavenly foxes. They were unable to use force. However, the number of heavenly foxes was limited, while the number of human cultivators was limitless. Therefore, as long as they continued to wait, sooner or later, there would be a day when the balance of power would be reversed. The heavenly foxes were very clear that they should finish expelling the human cultivators before the number of human cultivators outside reached a certain level. Otherwise, they might not have another chance like this. The courage of humans was always proportional to the number of human cultivators. In fact, all living creatures were the same. Since Aunt Chi no longer persisted in enduring, expelling those human half-immortals was the goal of the heavenly foxes. They had been waiting for this day for a long time. Expelling them, even if they succeeded once, it might lead to more trouble in the future. If they didn't expel them, it would be like boiling a frog in warm water. After enduring for one step, they would continue to endure until they couldn't bear it anymore. Currently, there were more than 10 human half-immortals in the path of forgetfulness. Most of them were half-immortal monsters, but there were also a small number of true half-immortals. They used different methods to privately descend to the lower realm and gather here. They were only here for the legendary heart plate that could refine the human realm. It must be admitted that among the half-immortals, there weren't many half-immortals who hoped to use this kind of inhumane method to obtain the concept of the Great Tao. Even if they wanted to do it, they might not be able to do it. Those who could truly come here were very few, and they were also the ones who were the most determined to not walk the normal path. However, with the huge number of human half-immortals, even if there were only a few of them, they gradually formed a pressure on the heavenly foxes. I have counted. There are a total of 17 people. Just recently, another 2 had joined the ranks. This is a dangerous signal. We must expel them as soon as possible. Otherwise, we might not have this kind of opportunity in the future. All of the great foxes reached a consensus on this point. Next, they discussed the problem of how to expel them. There were many methods. If they used force, the heavenly foxes also had more than 10 half-immortal level great foxes. If they used the illusion to expand, they would have the opportunity to kill a few human half-immortals. However, this was the last choice. Any race would be extremely cautious when starting a large-scale conflict with a human half-fairy, as it was easy to be impulsive, but it was difficult to clean up the mess. Wucho Lu's forest fox illusion could shrink and expand. This was a necessary ability of every high-level illusion. Shrinking meant stronger control. This was the final defensive measure, allowing the heavenly fox to be outnumbered. Expanding meant weaker control. As the illusion's range grew larger, the effect on the cultivators outside would become smaller and smaller. The human half-immortal obviously wouldn't get close now. Therefore, other than expanding the illusion, the heavenly foxes didn't have any other good ideas. The few great foxes communicated for a while and quickly reached a consensus. Aunt Chi decided, expand the illusory realm and focus on driving people away. Don't kill easily. The most important thing is to let them understand our attitude of not backing down, and understand that if they want to obtain something here, they have to pay a huge price. Presumably, after this, there would be people who would withdraw from this farce. I still think that among these people, there are those who truly covet the heart plate, and there must be those who are taking advantage of the situation to plot against it. Unfortunately, we can't recognize them. The war in the cultivation world was full of all kinds of complications. For example, in the current situation, if the ones being surrounded were humans, then needless to say, if they had the strength, they would have already fought their way out. If they didn't have the strength, then they would have already admitted defeat. This was a dispute between humans, so no one would say anything. You came to my doorstep for a gathering. If I don't fight you, who should I fight? But the same principle was very awkward for other races, especially for the heavenly fox race, which was isolated from the demon beasts and was more friendly towards humans. They had to constantly consider the consequences of killing people, whether it would cause public excrement in the human world. If they were careless and became the target of public criticism, then their race would be in danger. The integration of the human race was the eternal pain of the cultivation world. The expansion of the illusory realm didn't refer to the doubling of the illusory realm's range, but the doubling of the illusory realm's diameter. In other words, the same illusory realm's energy had to be expanded by 6 or 7 times. After this kind of energy spread out, it would be very difficult to affect the opponent's mind. At most, it would interfere, but it would be very difficult to cause any substantial damage. Aunt Chi's meaning was very clear. She didn't want to pull people into the realm to fight. She only wanted to rely on their own strength to gain some advantage in the communication between the heavenly foxes. It might also be able to achieve some effect in long-distance teleportation. The effect wasn't small. At least, they could fight with more people in a certain area, and it would be very convenient for them to retreat. This was the true meaning of driving people away. Showing one's strength to drive people away was always more convincing than beating people up in the illusory realm. This was based on a deep understanding of human cultivators. Otherwise, there would definitely be people who would say, "I'm not convinced. If you have the ability, then don't use illusory realms. Let's fight openly," and so on. Her decision was right, but there was still a problem. Granny Zhu reminded her, "We only have 15 half-immortal clansmen. We're at a disadvantage in numbers. Do we need to gather a few outstanding Sun God Juniors to make up for it?" Aunt Chi smiled. "Of course, but it's not a matter of making up for it. Our Sun God Juniors aren't weak either. Don't forget that half of these human half-immortals are the so-called monsters they speak of. They're just primordial spirits that have taken a step forward. In terms of strength, they're not much different from sun gods." The several great foxes quickly came up with a plan. This was a plan that they had considered countless times, so they didn't need to weigh it too much. 3 of the 15 half-immortal great foxes needed to stay behind to defend the inner circle in case the human cultivators counterattacked. The remaining 12 half-immortals and 10 sun god-level foxes would drive people away. This was the general plan. It was very simple, but in the cultivation world, the simplest was often the most effective. Miss Xiaoxu was also among the 10 sun god foxes. This could be seen from the fact that she was sent to the main world alone to carry out a mission. At the sun god level, her strength was quite extraordinary. The heavenly fox's strategy was very clear. Once the illusory realm was activated, the human half-immortals would definitely be alarmed. These people didn't belong to each other. Some would fight, and some would retreat for the time being. The heavenly foxes wouldn't stop those who retreated. They would only attack those who were tough and aggressive. Other than the most powerful eight-tailed heavenly foxes, the other foxes formed a two-person team. Half of them were immortal, while the other was sun god. They supported each other. In the expanded illusory realm, their biggest advantage was that they could communicate with each other at any time. If one team couldn't hold on, all sides would come to help. This was the essence of a group fight. Aunt Chi finally reminded them, "We won't kill them first. Our main goal is to drive them away. However, we can't control their thoughts. If they cross the line, you don't have to think too much. Just do it. Don't be restrained because of your misgivings. It'll be even more dangerous." Chapter 2082. The heavenly foxes made their preparations. Under Aunt Chi's command, the illusory realm began to expand outwards. As it expanded, it rapidly decreased the strength of its spiritual energy. Very quickly, it became a light illusory realm that could not pull people in. It continued to expand, as if a layer of invisible mist had quickly enveloped a large area of the sky. The change in this power could not be hidden from people, and of course, it could not be hidden from the human half-immortals who were secretly on guard. They were not surprised by the heavenly fox's methods at all. In terms of intelligence, the heavenly foxes were not inferior to humans. However, they were not inferior, not superior. In front of the most outstanding elites of humans, there was nothing that they could not consider or overlook. A cultivator spread out his divine sense, and half of the 17 half-immortals retreated. Most of the remaining chose to stay and watch. They were very clear about what kind of illusory realm was threatening and what kind of illusory realm was not. The expansion of the heavenly fox's illusory realm was within their expectations. In fact, there was nothing special about it. Everyone had been together in the universe for tens of thousands of years, so how could they not know about the ultimate skills of others? Especially for a race, the heavenly fox's illusory realm was their biggest label, and it could never be changed. This kind of attitude was actually an acceptable confrontation of strength. The human half-immortals did not reject this. The heavenly foxes might be very beautiful, and they might be very smart, but they had never heard of their fighting strength being so strong. Among the 17 half-immortals, other than the 9 who retreated, only 8 remained standing proudly. Those who were able to come here were not people who were afraid of death. There was only a question of whether it was worth it, not whether they dared to or not. A battle between half-immortals required a lot of people. The remaining 8 half-immortals immediately scattered. This was a battle of elegance, and there was no need for them to gather together. They were very clear about the heavenly fox's misgivings. There was no race that dared to truly kill a group of human half-immortals. It was nothing more than using all kinds of covert methods. Just like what the heavenly foxes were doing this time, they were putting on a great show of strength, but in reality, it was all empty inside. This was where the pride of humans lay. No matter what they did was right or wrong, they had countless of their own race supporting them. This was a signal that the heavenly foxes could not hold back any longer. They were using this seemingly tough method to tactfully make concessions. Next, as long as the humans had the upper hand in the battle, this would be a step that both sides could accept. It was a very clever method that was very much in line with the habits of humans. Just based on this point, the heavenly fox was much stronger than those stubborn immemorial beasts. Those retreating companions couldn't see this clearly. They were embarrassing themselves in front of others for no reason. Why were they running? Was there a need for this? The heavenly foxes appeared in the thin illusory environment. The half-immortals all spread out their bodies and faced them head-on. This was the result of free choice. Whoever they bumped into would be theirs. There was no possibility of being picky. Xiaofu followed Yu. They were part of one of the 10 Heavenly Fox teams. Yu was a 7-tailed Heavenly Fox, while Xiaofu was a 5-tailed Heavenly Fox. In battle, they had each other to rely on. It was impossible to achieve a uniform standard in a battle. For example, how many humans could a Heavenly Fox fight? Or the other way around. The measurement of strength was influenced by too many factors, such as cultivation, environment, population, number, luck. The luck here meant that you had met a soft one, or a hard one. Generally speaking, there were very few species that could compare to humans. Those that were stronger than humans were not as smart as humans. Those that had stronger vitality than humans did not have as many techniques as humans. The strength of Heavenly Foxes could be considered to be very close to humans. This was because many of their abilities were learned and not innate divine abilities. Innate divine abilities were a huge trap. It sounded frightening, but cultivators with divine abilities would often not seek to understand them because they were born with divine abilities. They would not develop them and would instead follow the prescribed order. Their divine abilities would forever remain at a certain level and would not seek to improve. Heavenly Foxes had the ability to grow. This was the source of their true strength. They could be on par with human cultivators of the same realm in individual combat. Therefore, the 7-tailed Heavenly Fox and 5-tailed Heavenly Fox were a very safe combination. In most situations, they would be able to handle it with ease. This was just in case. Heavenly Foxes were not weak and had high intelligence. However, they lacked experience. They often fought with humans and had the experience of life and death battles. The Heavenly Foxes themselves also understood this point. Therefore, they used small teams to arrange themselves. They didn't want any accidents to happen. The 10 small teams spread out like a fan. The basic principle was to find the target in front of them. The battle had just begun. There was no need to create artificial chaos right from the start. On the left of Xiaosu's team was Grandma Zhu. She was in a one-person team. She was old but strong. When she saw a human half-immortal waiting in front of her, she charged forward. According to the direction, this opponent should be Xiaosu and Aunt Yu's team. On their right was another 2-fox team. However, their speed was slightly faster than theirs. Therefore, they managed to snatch a human half-immortal as their opponent. In the end, when the fan swept over, their team did not manage to sweep their opponent. They could only continue forward and see if they had the luck to fight a big battle. Heavenly Foxes were a race that appeared humble on the outside but were proud on the inside. They had endured these human half-immortals for a long time. Xiaosu, let's fly forward a bit more. After 15 minutes, we'll turn back and see if we can pick up a fish that slipped through the net. Aunt Yu transmitted with her divine sense. They were very clear about the situation of the entire battlefield. This depended on the spread of the illusion. Although it did not have the effect of pulling people into the illusion, it was like a huge sensing field. Every Heavenly Fox could vaguely notice the distribution of the human half-immortals through the connection with the illusion. 9 human half-immortals immediately retreated. According to the plan of the Heavenly Foxes, they would not pester these tactful humans. They would only teach the remaining 8 who insisted on not retreating a lesson. This way, the Heavenly Fox team would have ample time. Although they wouldn't go as far as to surround and attack, they would be able to easily dispatch their forces. In the next moment, Aunt Yu discovered a target on the side. It seemed that the target was also retreating. However, she was somewhat hesitant. She did not want to let go of this target. She had finally started to counterattack with great difficulty. However, she still hadn't caught her opponent. Xiaosu also saw it. The 2 Heavenly Foxes instantly sped up and went around the target. Among the demonic beasts, Heavenly Foxes were definitely not the fastest. However, they were definitely at the top level. Under their sudden attack, they successfully caught a human half-immortal head-on. This human half-immortal looked very young. His orthodoxy was still unknown. He was in the primordial soul stage. This was the so-called demonic half-immortal. Who knew if he was from the interior realm? Or was he from the exterior realm? What surprised the 2 Heavenly Foxes was that this demonic half-immortal did not panic when he saw their arrival. Instead, he raised his hand and greeted them. 2 beauties, This is the first time we meet. Please take care of me. Chapter 2083. Xiaofu hated smooth-talking people the most, especially after the Dreamland incident. There were very few heavenly foxes like her. For the heavenly foxes, who paid attention to manners and etiquette, such behavior was improper, uneducated, and lacking confidence. Therefore, the foxes were always polite, making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. However, the people they studied under, human beings, the race with the most developed cultivation civilization, were filled with such mischievous people. They were indifferent and did not care about anything at all. They were not at all like the great cultivators who had achieved the Tao, just like the master in the Dreamland, who bullied her as soon as the sky turned dark. When she saw such a person again, anger rose from her heart and evil grew in her heart. Originally, the seven-tailed anti-you should be the leader of the two. She should be watching the enemy from the side, but because of the anger in her heart, she attacked a little hurriedly. She raised her hand, and a white tiger head appeared in the sky. Under the burst of the Tao realm, a momentum that could swallow the world arose spontaneously, and it bit down on the Taoist. Yes, it was indeed a tiger head. This was the mimicry of the heavenly fox's attack system. With the Tao realm as the foundation, it could transform into various beast souls to launch an attack. It had the support of the Tao realm and the integration of beast souls. It was a very famous move, called the fox borrowing the tiger's power. As soon as she attacked, Auntie-You had to suppress the attack that she had been preparing. Since she was going to expel the Taoist, she tried not to gang up on him. She had to fight with individual strength first. She had to make the human be convinced. In theory, there was not much difference between the strength of a young god and a half-immortal monster. It was not that they could not fight, but they were not confident. Auntie-You had the intention to wait for Xiaofu to fight a few rounds and see the opponent's strength before making a decision. Should she replace Xiaofu, or let Xiaofu continue to fight? As one of the best foxes in the young god, Xiaofu had such confidence, but she did not know why she had become so impulsive after coming back this time. The Taoist panicked when he was in front of the tiger's mouth. He rolled and crawled, running like a wolf when he was only a foot away from the tiger's mouth. It was very difficult for him to escape. This kind of performance was very inappropriate for a demi-immortal monster. As one of the most outstanding people among the human race, he didn't strike back decisively but kept running. In terms of battle tactics, he was very naive. Xiao Fan's ability to intimidate others was very sharp, but it was far from reaching the level where a half-immortal monstrous genius couldn't deal with it. The space in front of the tiger's mouth was filled with a powerful suction force. Nothing could escape from the roar of the tiger's mouth. However, the Taoist was able to escape by a hair's breadth every time. His movements were choppy, and he looked like he was having a cramp. He did not have the elegance and grace of a half-immortal cultivator, but he still managed to hold on. During this period, Xiaofu's follow-up spells were dense and precise. She wanted to press the last straw on the camel, but she couldn't press it. The tiger form was too close to the opponent, so there were scruples when using spells within range. If the coordination was not good, they would affect each other. This had never happened in previous battles, because no one would twist their waist and shake their buttocks in front of the tiger's mouth. Probably because he was being chased too much, the Taoist took a swaying stake and used a virtual figure to lure the white tiger to swallow him. He turned over and rode on the white tiger's back. He even laughed. Little Big Sister's white tiger is really amazing. It's making this young master want to die. Xiaofu was even more annoyed. She didn't know why, but there seemed to be a kind of anger in her. She just didn't like this Taoist. If it were someone else, she wouldn't have lost her composure. It was this person's sloppy attitude that she couldn't stand. She pinched her finger, and the white tiger disappeared. There were countless magical skills in the heavenly fox attack system. How could a tiger form represent them? For a moment, the two of them fought fiercely. It was the fiercest battle among all the battles. It seemed like they would fight to the death. But Aunt-You, who was watching the battle, didn't make a move. She just watched quietly and sighed in her heart. The monstrous genius of the human race lived up to his reputation. In a battle between cultivators, It was a principle to have both offense and defense. Offense was the best principle. This sentence was true. If a person could play with ease in a completely pure defense, it showed that there was a big gap between his strength and his opponents. Why did he do this? It was impossible for other races, but it was normal for a race like human. There were too many reasons. It proved that his strength was extraordinary. He didn't have any evil intentions toward the Heavenly Fox clan. He had a game mentality. He admired the lust of beauties, and so on. Since he didn't show any evil intentions for the time being, she didn't need to make a move. The purpose of the Heavenly Fox clan was to drive people away, not to make enemies. If a powerful human demigod had a playful attitude, at least it proved that this person didn't need to be offended. If he wanted to play, then let him play. The only thing that worried her was that this Taoist hid his roots so well that not even a drop of water could leak out. Not to mention the orthodoxy, even the direction of the Tao vein couldn't be seen clearly. The Tao realm with the Dharma vein. The body vein didn't fear close-range combat, and the sword vein was flexible. It was a hodgepodge. When mixed together, one couldn't taste the real flavor. What was he hiding? This was what Aunt Yu wanted to know the most. Lu Xiaoyi was stalling for time. He didn't have a choice. He had just arrived here and encountered the Heavenly Fox clan's banishment. His luck was extraordinarily good. He originally wanted to get in touch with the Heavenly Fox clan first. In view of the close relationship between the two sides, there was no need to pretend to be profound and hide, which would cause misunderstandings. He had always insisted on the importance of communication. It might lose the drama, but it was the most effective principle. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Fox clan didn't give him time. Once the illusion was activated, the foxes rushed forward. It would be difficult to communicate with them at this time. Maybe he would be misunderstood as having bad intentions? What puzzled him was that this banishment competition was very obvious and not too dangerous. In the cultivation world, everyone understood the rules. Why would the 9 demi-immortals immediately retreat? If they retreated so resolutely, then what was the point of them coming here? Wasn't it to show their strength and force the Heavenly Fox clan to reveal the secret of the heart compass? You have to show your toughness, whether in terms of attitude or strength. This was a terrible battle. The process was muddled. There was no organization. There was no mutual coordination. Everyone was fighting for themselves, and everyone had their own thoughts. In such a situation, he had no other choice but to deal with it. Intuitively, this large-scale banishment was not simple. As the most intelligent demonic beast clan, the Heavenly Fox clan's action was somewhat rash and wishful thinking. The human demi-immortal's response was a bit too deliberate and too artificial. He needed more time to observe and judge. Only then could he know what role he should play in this farce. Chapter 2084. Xiaosu's attacks were fierce, but after a few rounds, she had to admit that she could not do anything to this boring Taoist. Of course, she also understood the difference between her and her opponent. After venting her anger, she regained her rationality. At this moment, Auntie Yu's voice came into her ears. If he is willing to play games, play with him. There is no need to get a result. Pay attention to your own safety and try to get some information from him. I think he likes to chat, so we can go with the flow. Auntie was very experienced, and her advice was very pertinent. The only thing that made Xiaosu uncomfortable was that she was trying to get some information out of this guy. He was not serious at all, and he treated being shameless as something interesting. He looked like a pig, and he was almost drooling. Of course, she understood what Auntie Yu meant. She wanted her to use her natural charm as a heavenly fox to find the answer. To put it bluntly, it was seduction. In the Heavenly Fox race, this was nothing new. What was the biggest advantage of the Heavenly Fox race? Perhaps intelligence was second, but beauty was always the most important. The desire of humans to possess heavenly foxes had never stopped. This was also a fact. The reason why the dreamscape was dangerous was not only because of its illusory mechanism, but also because the beautiful heavenly foxes could manipulate people's hearts. If the same dreamscape was controlled by another master, it would not reach the same level as the heavenly foxes. But that was the dreamscape, and it was fake. It was a skill, a profession, But it did not mean that the heavenly foxes in the real world were all promiscuous. Xiaosu was the same. What she could do in the dreamscape, she was not willing to do in the real world. There was no other way. Auntie Yu had given her orders, and she did not seem to have any other better ideas. Hey, you bastard Taoist, do you dare to stop and have a real fight with me? If you keep jumping around like this, you will disgrace the reputation of the human demigods. You will make people look down on you. There were many ways to get close to someone. It was not all about flattery and flattery. Communication was an art, and heavenly foxes were a race that loved art. Therefore, when dealing with such a glib-tongued person, scolding him or her was much more effective than treating him with respect. Xiaosu knew this very well. Sure enough, after being scolded by her, the Taoist immediately became happy, as if he had eaten bee poop. He was also a bastard. Have a fight? Okay, anytime, anywhere, I will accompany you. Whether it was in the sky or on the ground, inside or outside the house. Didn't I say it before? We're all cultivators. Don't always think about competing with each other. Fighting here, and there is too much of a killjoy. Seems like you've thought it through, little fox. Bah, who has thought it through? You evil people are blocking people's door for no reason, and you even put on an appearance of upholding justice. It's so disgusting. None of them dared to reveal their names, nor did they dare to reveal their orthodoxies. How dare they call themselves heroes when they only know how to steal chickens and dogs? The tide of the times? Lead the general trend of an era? They're just a bunch of abandoned pawns who are manipulated by others without self-awareness. They don't even know that they're acting almighty here. In the eyes of the real experts, they're just stepping stones for the construction of the future universe. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. What a way to goad me. It's a pity I can't be provoked. The more he was agitated, the more he had diarrhea. Heroes aren't heroes. They're just bears trying to make a living. You want to know my background? It's not impossible. Why don't we find a place with beautiful scenery and everyone sit down? We can put aside our prejudices and be honest with each other. We can get rid of the barriers between us, join hands, and walk happily together. Lu Xiaoyi talked nonsense, and Little Fox pretended to be polite. Both of them had their own ulterior motives and were stalling for time, as if they were waiting for something. Within the range of the illusion, the other 7 battles were more or less the same. This was a test of the strength of the half-immortals. Don't think that it's very safe. It was just laying the foundation for the explosion later. Whether the humans retreated or the heavenly foxes tolerated, in the end, it still depended on strength. What was lacking now was just an opportunity to change the rhythm. Just like in a game of chess, everyone was very careful, each guarding their own position. They were just waiting for the mid-game battle to break in. The battle of the half-immortals was no longer at the level of fighting high up. It contained a lot of things. No one didn't understand the profoundness of it. If you didn't understand it, you wouldn't be able to reach this step. Where was the opportunity? Everyone, including Lu Xiaoyi, thought that someone would suddenly burst out and break the deadlock. Someone would be defeated or even die, and then things would get out of hand. However, their thoughts were wrong. The battles in the 8 areas were still very normal and stable. It was as if they were going to fight until the end of time. Aunt Chi and Granny Zhu immediately felt that something was wrong. They were the most familiar with the illusion. This was their foundation. Every change in the illusion was in their hearts. No clues could escape their senses. However, they now realized that the illusion was developing in the direction of losing control. There was an inexplicable, mysterious force that affected the operation of the illusion. It turned the illusion from a peaceful place that only provided a range of perception into a brutal, killing field of yin and yang. This change happened very quickly. From the time they felt the abnormality to the fundamental change in the illusion, it only took a few breaths. Was it a decree? A technique? A forbidden technique? Or something else? It was a tortoise array. In ancient times, there was a Shi formation. Yin and Yang opposed each other and were absolutely balanced. Simply put, it was to establish a rule in a fixed enchantment. The rule stipulated that Yin and Yang must be balanced. If they were not balanced, after every round, the rule would automatically erase a member of the stronger side. This cycle would continue until both yin and yang were equal. The Shi formation could not exist independently. It was a kind of accessory that was created with the help of a certain enchantment. For example, the illusion of the heavenly foxes now. In this formation, yin and yang could not enter and leave at will. They could only disappear until the absolute balance of yin and yang was reached, or until the formation ended. This was a very ancient evil formation. It was a kind of immortal-like formation. It was not circulated in the main world. As for what was used to activate this formation, it was impossible to find out in a hurry. For example, in the illusion now, there were 17 half-immortals. They were all Qin cultivators. There were also 12 half-immortal foxes and 10 young god heavenly foxes. However, not all of them were Kuan cultivators. The heavenly foxes were led by Kuan, but not all of them were led by Kuan. There were also male foxes. It was just that the higher the realm, the fewer male foxes there were. For example, in the lineup they had sent out, 3 of the 12 half-immortal foxes were male. 5 of the 10 young god heavenly foxes were male. In other words, there were 8 male foxes in the lineup of heavenly foxes, who were of the yang attribute. There were also 14 female foxes, who were of the yin attribute. If the number of humans and heavenly foxes were added together, based on yin and yang, there would be 25 Qin cultivators and 14 Kuan cultivators. Yin and yang were not balanced. After one round, a Qin cultivator would automatically disappear under the rule. This was far beyond the scope of the Tao decree technique. It was close to the scope of an immortal formation. Under such power, how would the cultivators choose? Chapter 2085. In one round, the yin and yang of the nightmare array would change. Using the normal concept of time, it would take less than 100 breaths. It was a very short period of time. One could imagine how much pressure it would be to wipe out a cultivator's life in 100 breaths. As the current clan leader of the Heavenly Fox clan, Aunt Chi's reaction was quite fast. In just a few breaths, she understood who was causing trouble. That's right, it was the 9 human half-immortals who immediately retreated when the illusion appeared. Their retreat was indeed premeditated. It seemed that they were also on guard against the expansion of the Heavenly Fox's illusion and had specially prepared such a nightmare array. The difficulty of a nightmare array was extraordinary. All kinds of prerequisites had to be met. To be able to set it up so quickly in such a short period of time, who would believe that it was a coincidence? They must have been plotting for a long time. They had been waiting here for the expansion of the Heavenly Fox's illusion. In other words, the nightmare array couldn't be used in a real illusion. Now that things had reached this point, there was no way out. If they wanted to eliminate the nightmare array from the root, only the 3 great foxes outside led by Granny Jing could do it. However, their manpower was limited. It was unrealistic to expect them to break it in a short period of time. Cultivators shouldn't place all their hopes on others. Attack with all your strength. Every time you kill a human Qin Xiu, the yin and yang will be more balanced. In addition, control the battle distance. Don't be too far away from the group. Since the nightmare array was an immortal array, it naturally wouldn't be targeted by the Tao orthodoxies. This was the foundation of a powerful restriction array. Its essence was the same as the Tao decree array technique. Under such circumstances, the female foxes were actually the safest. Unless they died in battle, the nightmare array wouldn't harm them. Because they had fewer people, the nightmare array had to eliminate at least 11 Qin Shtou. They could be human half-immortals or male foxes. There were actually 3 ways to make the nightmare array stop killing people. The first was to strive to achieve a balance of yin and yang in the illusion array. It would become a dynamic balance array. The second was to kill all the Qin Xiu and become a pure yang array. The nightmare array would disappear on its own. The third was to kill all the Qin Xiu and become a yin sunflower array. It could also break the nightmare array. Aunt Chi chose the first method. As long as she could kill some human half-immortals, she could achieve balance and everyone would be safe. She couldn't possibly use the second method. She wasn't that noble. The third method was actually a deep expansion of the first method. You had to first achieve a balance between yin and yang before you could continue. Obviously, it was meaningless. The appearance of the pyrolite formation seemed to be helping neither side. It even seemed to be leaning towards the Heavenly Fox clan, which had the majority of Kuan cultivators. However, Aunt Chi knew that things were far from that simple. It was obvious that the human half-immortals had been divided into two camps. One was the 9 people who had retreated. They had already made plans and came prepared. The other group was the 8 half-immortals who had been at the front. They had been betrayed by their human companions. Of course, this was a common occurrence in the human cultivation world. One could only blame oneself for not being capable enough and not being cautious enough. These people did not actually care who died, whether it was a human or a heavenly fox. They just wanted to create a bloodbath to benefit their future goals. In this sense, no matter how the Heavenly Fox clan dealt with it, they would face endless troubles in the future. However, this was a matter for the future. Right now, Aunt Chi had to first ensure the safety of her clansmen. Other than killing, she had no other choice. When the pyrolite formation was activated, all the human half-immortals in the formation understood what was going on. They were all great cultivators and had extensive knowledge. No one was still ignorant until now. A voice sounded. It came from one of the 9 cultivators who had retreated. "I'm very sorry for pulling everyone into such a situation where you have to fight. However, we cultivators go against the heavens and change our fate. We don't have to fear death. Yin and Yang are out of balance. Yang flourishes and Yin declines. Therefore, this formation will erase the life of a Qin cultivator in every round. It's you, us, and those male foxes. Everyone's chances are the same. It's just luck. Once we reach the balance of Yin and Yang, we will be able to survive this crisis. However, even if we don't fight, 11 of us will die. Out of 25, who would be willing to make such a choice? Who would place their hopes on their own luck? Then, there is another way. We can take the chance of survival into our own hands. That is, kill all the female foxes. I have no right to order you how to choose. Everyone has a clear account in their hearts. Let the bloody feast begin. Either become a conqueror or die a martyr." The choices of humans and heavenly foxes were different. This was inevitable. When the pyrolite formation was activated, this was the result. There were no accidents. In this formation, the heavenly foxes were of one mind. They had to be of one mind, regardless of gender. Among the human half-immortals, the 9 instigators of the puppet formation all had the same goal. They had already planned this long ago. Most of them were genuine half-immortals. They used their actions to teach those young monstrous geniuses a profound lesson. The only ones who were not of one mind were the 8 half-immortal monsters. They had been betrayed by their seniors and were forced to fight to the death with the heavenly foxes. If they had to die, they hoped to die in battle and not be erased by the rules. This was the basic philosophy of cultivators. To the 8 of them, although they were unwilling, the only way was to kill all the foxes, regardless of whether they were male or female. The existence of the pyrolite formation had actually divided the cultivators in the formation into 4 groups. The human half-immortal group, the half-immortal monster group, the female fox group, and the male fox group. However, if one were to talk about which group was the most dangerous, it would be the male fox group. This was because killing them would not only eliminate the heavenly fox's strength, but also give them a place to be killed in the next round. In any case, they had to eliminate a Qianxiu every round. So why not eliminate the male foxes? At least this way, the human half-immortals would be able to avoid a calamity, even if it was only temporary. 8 male foxes would be able to last for 8 rounds. This was the simplest way of thinking of the human cultivators. The dead foxes were not the poor ones. They were all quick-witted people and instantly understood the crux of the matter. To summarize it in one sentence, kill the foxes, regardless of gender. This was what the 9 human half-immortals wanted to see. They could easily cause an unresolvable hatred between the humans and the heavenly foxes. There were so many human half-immortals. As long as a small number of them did not like this matter, it would be a disaster for the heavenly foxes. Moreover, based on the current situation, the foxes might not be able to escape this calamity. As for the 8 half-immortal monsters, this was a lesson for them to be arrogant and self-righteous. Whether they could survive this kind of battle would depend on their ability. The premise of all this was that the humans had always believed that the 17 human half-immortals had a high chance of defeating the 22 heavenly foxes. This had nothing to do with cultivation realm. How many years had it been since the heavenly foxes had fought a real battle? Hiding in the illusory shell and playing tricks seemed safe, but once it was broken, they would have to pay a huge price. Chapter 2086. Xiaosu had received Aunt Chi's message. Just like Aunt Yu, they knew that they had to kill him. Even if the Taoist in front of them was full of nonsense and his actions were weird and wretched, they didn't have the desire to kill him. Because of their wisdom and understanding, they knew that the Taoist in front of them wasn't the instigator. He was also a victim. However, there was no mercy in a fight between races. If they had to choose who to sacrifice, they wouldn't choose to let this Taoist go and let their own race suffer. I'm sorry. If you want to blame someone, blame your human companions. If there's a chance in the future, I'll make a sacrifice in front of your grave. The Taoist laughed. Please, little fox, can't you make a more realistic wish? For example, performing a hair removal dance in front of my grave? Before he finished speaking, he had already fled far away. His speed was so fast that even Aunt Yu's divine sense couldn't lock onto him before she could use her technique. Xiaosu, you have to change this bad habit of yours. Since you've already shed all pretense of cordiality with the humans, why do you have so much nonsense to say? Now, he has run away, right? Quickly chase after him. The two foxes used their full speed and chased after the Taoist. However, after a few breaths of time, they completely lost track of him. The two foxes suddenly realized that what they thought was a small gap was actually a huge gap. They couldn't continue. The Taoist had already disappeared, but other Taoists had taken his place. They were 2 of the 9 human half-immortals who had retreated. They came back aggressively. Now was the time for them to reap lives. Xiaosu and Aunt Yu were originally at the front, so they chased after the Taoist for a few more steps. As a result, they put themselves in a dangerous situation. Xiaosu, no matter what happens, you're not allowed to leave my side. Aunt Yu reminded her with her divine sense. As the most outstanding 5-tailed heavenly fox of the younger generation, she couldn't watch her die here. She had to take up the responsibility of an elder. The two foxes quickly joined hands. With them as the center, a canopy slowly rose. It was half a cloud. It was the Heavenly Fox Clan's supreme defensive technique, the Green Mountain Canopy. When a cultivator reached the half-immortal realm, they had long abandoned the kind of defensive methods that were used to attack each other. That was because this kind of defensive method would tie up a lot of the cultivator's energy, which would affect the output of the cultivator's attacks. Therefore, as long as they could do it, they would, without exception, use their best auspicious clouds in a real battle. Even if it was an incomplete half, it was to free up his hands to launch an attack. The auspicious cloud was the supreme achievement of a half-immortal cultivator in terms of elemental energy, mental energy, and Tao realm. It was very effective against physical attacks, forbidden spells, and Tao realm attacks. As long as your understanding of the Tao realm was deep enough, others would not be able to break through your defense. Delaying was the strategy of the heavenly foxes. Because under the rules of the matrix formation, a Qian Xiu would be taken away in every round. 17 human Qian Xiu and 8 male foxes. In terms of probability, it was naturally more likely that the ones killed were humans. This was a very simple logic. Of course, the combination of the 2 of them was definitely not a match for 2 true human half-immortals. When to attack and when to defend, the rational heavenly foxes made the most suitable choice for the current situation. Under the heavy attacks of the 2 human half-immortals, the Green Hill Canopy was in imminent danger and was on the verge of collapse. However, they did not disperse from beginning to end. Because they were of the same race, Shaoli could give Aunt Yu the most practical help. Because they had the advantage in numbers, the foxes did not show any signs of fatigue. It was very rare to see 2 versus 2 like Shaoli. In most cases, the heavenly foxes had the advantage in numbers. Moreover, the heavenly foxes had a common characteristic of demonic beasts, which was their unusually vigorous vitality. A cat has 9 lives, and a fox follows its tail. The heavenly foxes were the same as all demonic beasts, strange beasts, and ancient beasts. They did not have the problem of cutting off the past or the future. However, their body's resistance was much stronger than that of humans. This was something that no body cultivation technique could compare to. To the heavenly foxes, the number of tails they had represented the number of lives they had. Therefore, Entu had 7 lives and Shaoli had 5. They still had a long way to go. One round was the interval between the yin and yang of the matrix formation. This interval was related to many factors. For example, the number of cultivators in the matrix formation, the degree of imbalance between the yin and yang, the external environment, the nature of the matrix formation, and so on. In theory, the possibility of the matrix formation creating the first death was very high. The heavenly foxes' lives were very tough. Human demigods were more experienced and had more tricks up their sleeves. It was very rare for them to be able to determine life and death in a few breaths of time. However, everyone's guess was wrong again. Everyone could feel the phenomenon of the Tao disappearing. Through the matrix formation, they all understood that the accident was caused by a leader. He had been killed. He had not been erased by the rules. After being surprised, they could not help but wonder what had happened. Did the heavenly foxes have the ability to kill so quickly? One had to know that there were nearly half of the demigods here. To kill them, one had to cut off the past and the future at the same time. Without experience in this area, it was easier said than done. Humans did not seem to have the ability to kill so quickly. To kill a heavenly fox, even the weakest 5-tailed heavenly fox here needed to be killed 5 times. The foxes were not stupid. Would they just stand there and wait? When the illusory realm was transformed into a nightmare formation, both sides would be treated equally. Every cultivator would be able to sense the contrast between yin and yang in the nightmare formation. They would be able to know how many male cultivators were still alive, how many females were left. However, they would not know who had died. Whether it was a human or a fox, they did not know. They only knew about yin and yang, and nothing else. However, all the male creatures could not help but let out a sigh of relief. The good news was that one of them had died, and it was not them. In other words, they had luckily passed the first round. Everyone was nervous, and the fox was worried. Because the battlefield was very scattered, no one could immediately grasp the situation of the enemy and their side. The only thing they could grasp was the contrast between the males and females. If they wanted to change their battle strategy, they did not have an accurate basis. The human demigods were very confident in their own strength, and the heavenly foxes were very confident in their tails. In this kind of chaos, they suddenly felt that the entire matrix formation was brightening and dimming, as if something had changed. Thus, they knew that this was the end of the first round. Because a male had died just now, the rules of the matrix formation had tacitly agreed that it had been erased once. Now, they just had to see if there would be any more deaths before the end of the next round. If another cultivator was killed, and if it was a male cultivator, the nightmare formation would still not activate the obliteration process. If no one died, or if it was a female cultivator, then one of the male cultivators would be in for a bad time. Everyone was working hard, especially those male foxes. The pressure was especially great, and some of the weaker ones had already been killed 2 or 3 times. They did not have enough tails to protect them all the time. Chapter 2087. Xiaosu and Antu were having a hard time blocking the attacks. Their opponents were a little anxious. The main force of the Heavenly Fox clan was these gorgeously dressed and bewitching beauties. They were also the targets of their elimination. However, after one round of fighting, none of them had been killed. This made them feel very embarrassed, especially the 2 of them. In a 2-on-2 situation, they were still fighting so anxiously. It was really a little unreasonable. When the 2 human half-immortals began to fight seriously, the gap between their experience and methods was completely revealed. They cooperated perfectly and gathered their Tao realm. The ever-flickering canopy of the Green Mountains could no longer hold on and was smashed into pieces. Antu had fulfilled her responsibility as an elder. She lost a foxtail to help Xiaosu hold up the last barrier. The two foxes began to struggle bitterly in the storm. Without the canopy of the Green Mountains, they could only hold on for a shorter time. Xiaosu, Aunt Yu looked at her apologetically. She was sorry that she could not protect her, because they could not be so passive anymore. Only by attacking could they pose a threat to their opponents and reduce the pressure on their defense. However, it also meant that it would be difficult for her to protect the safety of the younger generation. Xiaosu did not hesitate and took the initiative to attack. She was a young spirit cultivator, and she was not a child. She still had 5 chances. Her only wish was to try to kill the last human half-immortal. The Heavenly Fox clan cared for the younger generation very much, but she did not like this. The two foxes completely let go of their hands and feet. They no longer considered the problem of how many tails they had left. Under the crazy counterattack, the two half-immortals retreated step by step. It seemed to be very effective, but in fact, in the eyes of the two experienced fighting masters, they should avoid the sharp edge at this time. No one could maintain such an intensity of elemental energy output. Once they relaxed, it would be the problem of another tale. They were rich in experience, and their methods were sophisticated. They secretly accumulated power while retreating. How could the foxes, who had lost the protection of the illusion, have the methods of these human half-immortals who often wandered between life and death? Fighting was never a competition of cultivation realms. There were too many factors that affected it, including fighting mentality. This was something that could not be experienced in the illusion. Little Jin's fox steps and spits pearls. That was her heavenly jewel, a sharp weapon that could ignore the Tao realm seal. It was also her trump card. The fox pearls hit her opponent as she wished. However, the half-immortal didn't seem to care at all. He went over and regenerated. Another half-immortal waved his bowstring and slashed down. Little Jin's foxtails turned into 4. When the fox pearl returned, it had already dimmed quite a bit. From the looks of it, she could only use it a few more times. This filled her with a sense of defeat. Because of the fierce attack, she was unknowingly separated from Aunt Yu by the two half-immortals. This was the true goal of the half-immortals. Now, it was time to harvest her life. Even though she still had 4 foxtails, she wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. The two half-immortals had achieved their goal, so they didn't retreat anymore. Instead, they clung tightly to each other and were about to attack. However, they didn't expect that in this short period of time, another Tao-dispelling heavenly phenomenon would appear in the space of the formation. Just like the last time, another Qin Xiu was killed. Things had become a little unusual. Not a single Kuan cultivator had died, but 2 Qin cultivators had died. Were they 2 male foxes? This kind of thinking was probably wishful thinking. A shadow was cast over the hearts of the human half-immortals. Although the result of being killed by a fox and being erased by the rules were the same, the significance was completely different. This meant that there were also experts among the heavenly foxes who were proficient in fighting. Everyone had survived another round. But now, the human half-immortals didn't have the slightest bit of joy. This was because they realized that the situation was developing towards the direction of losing control. This damned enchantment, this damned nightmare formation, the vague information made everyone in a state of anxiety and fear. This also included Aunt Chi. She was one of the few heavenly foxes who could suppress the human half-immortals by herself. However, her individual strength wasn't enough to help her clan turn the tables in this kind of group battle. This was because her opponent was an exterior 5th decay cultivator. Because the number of heavenly foxes as a whole was limited, the humans understood the composition of the heavenly fox's strength very well. They didn't have any surprise troops to use. The Nightmare Formation's special operating mechanism completely cut off all kinds of instantaneous perception that should belong to the illusory realm. This made her unable to have a complete understanding of the overall situation of the battle. This was a very bad thing for a clan leader. What was worse was that her opponent, the human 5th decay cultivator, was very clear about her identity. He kept pestering her, making it impossible for her to escape. The bloodshed had already begun. No matter whether the 2 who died were humans or heavenly foxes, this hatred had already been planted. They couldn't endure it like before. Similarly, if the one who suffered losses was a human half-immortal, After what happened here slowly spread out, it would also mean endless harassment. How could they break out of this situation? Even a wise person like her was at her wit's end, because some things had nothing to do with wisdom, but only with strength. They had made careful arrangements beforehand, and they had all kinds of emergency plans, including the cooperation of Granny Jing, who was outside. But no matter how much they thought about it, they did not expect the celestial array to appear. There were countless demonic beast clans in the world. There were many powerful, threatening, and ambitious ones everywhere. How could the heavenly foxes attract the attention of the immortals? They taught the nightmare formation, but only wanted to break the defense of the illusory realm? As sharp as she had already realized that this probably had nothing to do with the heavenly foxes themselves. It was related to a certain ally of the heavenly foxes. After all, no matter how much trouble the heavenly foxes could cause, it was already in the past. In terms of consequences, they couldn't be compared to that guy in the past. The pressure of being friends with the sword vein was really not ordinary. Just as she was in a dilemma, a fox shadow flashed across the sky. It was a six-tailed elder. When he saw her, he reached out and joined the battle. "Aunt Chi, the situation has changed. There seems to be an internal conflict among the human half-immortals. I was fighting with a monk, but who knew that a flying sword would suddenly appear and kill the monk? I didn't see clearly who did it. The situation was too chaotic, and the speed was too fast. Could it be that the fairy formation came?" When Aunt Chi heard this, her heart was set. She ordered, "It should be. Don't help me here. I'm fine here. You go and inform as many clansmen as possible. Don't be anxious for success. Don't destroy everything. If we stall for time, we will definitely have the last laugh." The six-tailed heavenly fox understood the meaning behind this. When it came to killing people cleanly, no one could compare to that orthodoxy. The heavenly foxes were good at setting up illusions, not ending battles quickly. He didn't say much and immediately left, leaving Aunt Chi here alone. A trace of a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Her premonition was right. Why did they choose this time to start the expulsion? There were many reasons. The mood of the clansmen, the increasing number of opponents, the change in Lin Hu's home. But these were not the main reason. The main reason was that if the person Xiaosu met was really the person she thought, then he would definitely follow her and arrive at the same time as Xiaosu. Elder Zhu once said that the other party had recently joined two people. She was afraid that one of them, this was her real trump card. It was also the reason why she was still able to maintain her confidence until now. She was a bit absent-minded. It had been 20,000 years. The person from the past was no longer here, but his successor had finally appeared. It was the same tradition. He was still sneaking around and playing dirty tricks. How nostalgic. Chapter 2088. Within a short span of 100 breaths, Xiao Jin's tail changed from 5 to 1. She did not have much time left, but her opponent was still as calm as before. He was as steady as Mount Tai under her crazy counterattack. You could no longer see him. At their level of battle, they could move around freely and cover a large area. It was very difficult for them to maintain a group when they needed to adapt. After a few large-scale teleportations and a few changes in their Dao realms, where could they find him? She did not want to find him either. She knew that she did not have much chance left. Even the Fox Pearl was dim and could not be used anymore. Her body had returned to its original state, which was the strongest battle state of the monster race. A small white fox. She bared her teeth and roared. Her hair stood up and her eyes were filled with ferocity. Her cute and small figure formed a huge contrast with her current expression. She was like a kitten whose toy was taken away. A kitten was a kitten. In front of a strong human, her claws were not sharp enough and her teeth were not long enough. She was already preparing for the final attack. Well, it was actually a last-ditch struggle. The Taoist in front of her was a third blight cultivator. He had no sympathy for the little fox in front of him. He did not raise pets and did not like small animals. In his opinion, these foxes were no different from insects. The path of Tao did not allow for a trace of pity. Do you know the refining method of the heart plate? If you give it to me now, I can consider sparing your life. 10,000 years of life will be destroyed in a day, just for the ridiculous persistence of the fox race? You decide what you want to do. If you keep it a secret, in the end, for the survival of your race, your heavenly fox race will also spit it out. It's just a matter of time. Xiao Jian squatted slightly and kicked her hind legs. A white light flashed, and she had already decided to rush out. The monster race rarely accepted threats. To them, it was a common trait to be amenable to persuasion but not coercion. Of course, the heavenly fox was the same. However, this Taoist did not really mean to let her go. It was just a last provocation. They had already wasted a lot of time, so he did not want to waste any more time. When a monster was provoked, it would erupt with a stronger combat power. However, it would also lose its mind. This was an opportunity. The battle of the veteran always began with psychological warfare. Facing the charging little fox, the Taoist waved his hand, and circle after circle of light accurately wrapped around it. This was a variation of the great cutting technique. Not only could it cut through all things, it could also imprison the body. It was very suitable for demonic beasts. The light hoop was endless, and the confinement power was getting stronger and stronger. Little Baihu's speed was getting slower and slower, and it was getting more and more difficult. The moment she stopped was the moment the light blade cut. Xiaowu only had one tail, which could block one death. However, the reason why the Taoist used the halo to trap her was that he did not want to give her another chance. This was a series of consecutive kills, and one tail was not enough. A trace of disdain appears on the Taoist's face. The comeback in the world of cultivation is said to be miraculous, but in fact, it is just an example. The real powerhouses all understand the principle that those who are good at fighting have no outstanding achievements. Is the profession of cultivation something that can be solved by risking one's life? The gap between the sun spirit and the third decay is huge, and it cannot be filled by willpower. The white light that little Baihu transformed into was blocked by layers and became slower and slower. It was as if she had rushed into a swamp, powerless and helpless. The Taoist's hand tightened, and he was about to strengthen his Tao state to not give her a chance to sacrifice her fox tail. At this moment, the white light seemed to be divided into two. One was still staggering forward, and the other was faster than lightning, coming straight to his face. It should be the celestial fox secret technique outside the body, which is a spiritual power. This is the Taoist's first judgment. It belongs to the mentality of not being able to reverse the situation before death. It looks scary, but it is not worth mentioning. The Taoist has rich experience. Even if he has the pearl of wisdom, he will not be careless. He opened his mouth, and a green light came out. The refined power is like a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. However, when the green light came out, he felt something is wrong. The flying white light contains endless sharpness. Although the momentum is hidden, the killing intent is revealed. This should not be the means of the celestial fox clan. He was shocked, but it is too late to take countermeasures. Wherever the white light went, his green light was smashed into pieces. It didn't even manage to stop it. Following that, he felt a sharp pain in his head. In an instant, countless sharp edges smashed into his Niwen. Then, they followed along his meridians and destroyed everything in his body. The half-immortal body that he was so proud of was torn apart by such power. It is the flying sword. This is the Taoist's last consciousness. The next moment, he relied on his past self to be reborn in the distance. There is only one thought left in his mind, and that is to run quickly. Whether this little fox has the ability of a swordsman, or a real swordsman secretly used the sword, he knows that the power of this sword is not something that he can resist. Run. Run with half of the auspicious cloud. In the face of danger, nothing is more important than life. But he still did not have time. The auspicious cloud has not been formed, and the escape trace has not been fully launched. 3 white lights flashed again, attacking his past, present, and future. Not only is it fierce, but it is also accurate. He only used the past once, and it has been accurately captured. It is not the means of a fox. It is the attack of a top swordsman. As for who it is, He has at least heard of it as a third decay cultivator of the exterior realm. He has only said one word when the sword light fell, and everything returned to nature. Little Sleepyhead was trapped by the halos in a sorry state. She could only feel the pressure from the countless halos on her body growing stronger and stronger. It was so strong that she could not even move her feet. She had no other choice but to charge forward by burning her potential. Only when she was close enough could she use her final mind-splitting technique, but now was not enough. Under such a rush, everything that happened in front of her made her a little confused. As all the light circles on her body suddenly disappeared after the Taoist died, her body was free and she could not help but rush forward. Exhausted and physically and mentally injured, she did not have time to stop her body. She only felt a tight grip on the back of her neck, and she was lifted up. It is impossible for a sun spirit to be so easily captured by others. But now she has been tortured to exhaustion. Her body is not the most important thing, but the most important thing is her spirit. She was going back and forth between life and death, and suddenly appeared inexplicably, unable to distinguish between friend and foe. In a trance, she fell into someone's trap. Not only was her neck lifted, but the other hand took the opportunity to touch her tail, the most precious part of the celestial fox tribe, the place that will not be touched by a second person in a lifetime, and skillfully tied a knot on her tail. There is also a voice with bad intentions, haha. People say that rabbit tails can't grow. I see that foxtail of yours. Alas, what's wrong? You are biting. Little white fox wriggled in the air in vain. She wanted to turn her head and take a bite, but she could not. 2 lines of tears flowed down her eyes involuntarily. The voice gently threw her out. Why are you crying when you can't bite? Chapter 2089. Xiao Yu flipped her body and returned to her human form, but her heart was in turmoil, with mixed feelings. She recognized this guy. Not only was he the Taoist who was dawdling with her, but he was also the shameless rabbit in the forest fox dreamland. Even for her, dreamlands was not something that she could remember clearly. After a period of time, she had already forgotten most of the things that she should have forgotten. The only thing that she could remember was the skillful way of rubbing the foxtail. It was something that she would never forget. This thing, as expected, followed Macho Road and saved her, but she could not feel any gratitude. The only thing she wanted to do was to pounce on it and bite it a few times. But she knew she could not expose herself. Otherwise, she would be in trouble. This guy's methods were really abnormal. He was not a human. Who are you? Why did you save me? The Heavenly Fox clan does not accept external favors. If there is a request that I can't fulfill, I might as well return my life to you now. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. It's just convenient. Why do you ask so many questions? I heard that the Heavenly Fox clan is the most grateful. I thought I could repay with my body, fold the quilt, make the bed or something. As soon as Xiao Jian heard that he was here again, she knew that this fellow was used to speaking nonsense, so she ignored him. That Taoist only said one word before he died. T? Is that your name? Lu Xiaoyi pretended to be stupid. I don't know. I heard someone say T, so I just picked you up. I didn't mean to blaspheme. I didn't know how to control my strength. The torture array is still dangerous. Time is precious. Are you going to follow me? Or find your own way? The Taoist so-called T was, of course. He was still somewhat famous in the exterior realm. Xiao Yu also knew that now was not the time to gossip. She was not a person who relied on the strong. I will find my own way. I won't go with you. I won't cause trouble and ruin your plan. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. This little fox was quite sensible. She knew what to do and what not to do. His time was precious. He did not want to put himself in the random selection of the torture array. Randomly choose one of the 25 Qianxiu to be annihilated? Are you kidding me? He dared to bet that the 9 half-immortals would definitely have a way to exclude him from the selection. In other words, only the other human half-immortals and the 8 male foxes were truly in danger. He didn't want to play this kind of lucky game. Even if the probability was very low, he still wasn't willing. Since he wouldn't kill those innocent heavenly foxes, he could only attack the human half-deities, especially those 9 who had secretly set up the ensnaring formation. The Heavenly Fox clan was the Crow ancestors' friend. Although Lu Xiaoyi had never come into contact with them, there were some traditions that must be upheld. Whatever was protected by Xinyuan and the Crow ancestor, it must not fall. Otherwise, how could Lu Xiaoyi have the ability to command hundreds of people in the future universe? If you can't even protect your own people, who would want to work with you? Out of these 9 people, he had already killed 3. It was now the 3rd round, and time was still very tight. The rules could be obliterated at any time. He did not have any personal feelings for the Heavenly Fox. The Crow ancestors' friends might not necessarily be his, but he had to respect them. If he had to find a reason, then it could only be his desire to control. He didn't like being kept in the dark. He didn't like being pushed to risk his life. He didn't like people telling him what to do behind his back. Even more so, he didn't like putting his life in a lottery. Go find the person in charge of the Heavenly Fox clan. Tell her that the target is the 9 instigators. Now there are only 6 left. As for the others, there is no benefit in killing more. Xiaofu was very smart and immediately understood what he meant. Killing people indiscriminately was not advisable. They should have a more targeted target. Of course, they couldn't kill all the Qin cultivators. The best goal was to achieve the balance of yin and yang in the universe. If they must kill, they should kill those who deliberately stirred up trouble. This was very important. It meant that they should not drag in those unrelated people who were not part of the conspiracy. How could such a small clan like the Heavenly Fox clan have the strength to contend with the human half-immortals? Understood. My task is to spread the news to the ears of every clan member, not to participate in the battle. Looking at the little white fox leaving, Lu Xiaoyi smiled slightly. The Heavenly Fox was really smart. It would be very pleasant to communicate with this kind of clan member. It was much easier than persuading those ancient beasts in Heaven's choice. He needed to speed up. Not only was the Heavenly Fox working hard, he also needed to contact the 8 half-immortals who didn't know the truth. This was not difficult. In fact, after all this happened, the resentment of the 8 people towards the 9 instigators would be even greater. Now, they attacked the Heavenly Fox clan because they were forced by the situation. If they saw another way to solve the problem, it would be easy to change. Right now, it was the most dangerous moment. The obliteration of the rules could descend at any moment. If there was enough time, everyone would reach an agreement to deal with the 9 instigators sooner or later. But now, the rules were chasing after them. If they didn't want to draw the lottery, they had to kill. The situation developed better than he imagined. When he was looking for the next 9 targets, he met one of the 8 who didn't know the truth. After a little explanation, he immediately understood and joined his team. This was a simple math problem. If they insisted on killing the Heavenly Fox and Kuan Xiu, they would still need to kill 14 people. If they started with Qin Xiu, they would only need to kill 8 people. 6 of them were people who everyone held grudges against, so they didn't have any psychological burden. As for where to find the last 2 people, they would fight and talk about it. The news spread very quickly, because the Heavenly Fox clan's advantage in numbers was beginning to show. In addition, the human half-immortals who changed their targets gradually formed a consensus. The 6 people began to fall into a situation where everyone wanted to kill them. They also didn't expect that a perfect plan that had been planned for a long time would fail just like that. They didn't even know where it started. The situation began to slide in the most impossible and worst direction. Other than saying that it was Heaven's will, what else could be used to explain it? Lu Xiaoyi didn't take the lead in killing people. This wasn't a good thing. Killing each other in front of a different race, regardless of whether it was right or wrong. Some old-fashioned people in the cultivation world would use it as an excuse. Actually, there was no need for him to take the lead. As Qin Xiu died one after another in the puppet formation, even an idiot would know what had happened and what he should do. The Heavenly Foxes made use of their advantage in numbers to pass the message to the right place. They completely focused their attention on the 9 half-immortals. With the help of the other 8 half-immortals, the battle completely turned into a gang fight. During this process, a male fox was killed by the counterattack. In the end, when the human half-immortals and Heavenly Foxes gathered together, there were still 8 human half-immortals, 14 female foxes, 3 male half-immortals, and 4 male young god foxes left. They still needed one more to reach the balance of yin and yang. Who deserved to die? Chapter 2090. The turn was coming. Should he rely on his luck? Or should he find another target? If he wanted to find a target, should it be a human? Or a celestial fox? The time was short, and the atmosphere was unstable. If he did not handle it well, he would fall into chaos again, and there would be no reconciliation. Lu Xiaoyi also had a headache. He had killed 5 of them so that he would not rely on luck. Usually, when he had such unique luck, he was the first choice of God. This was a feeling that came from the unseen world. He suddenly realized that the celestial formation's target might not necessarily be a celestial fox, but could it be him? This was a very natural and flawless killing trap. He instinctively resisted this trap, so his first choice was to kill to prevent the rules from activating. He had struggled all the way and killed a Qianxiu every time before the end of the turn, so that the array would consider it a success. He had been racing against time, and now he was in a dilemma at the last moment. 15 against 14, and there was one more male. He was not a moral saint, and he was not so noble as to sacrifice himself for the so-called righteous cause. In a different environment, if he was not in front of so many people, he would not hesitate to kill, no matter who it was. But now, everyone was gathered face to face, and everything was under the scrutiny of the crowd. Killing demi-immortals? The prestige he had built up in the interior and exterior realms over the past 100 years would be completely gone. Everyone would think that he was a selfish, temperamental, ambitious, and ruthless person who viewed other people's lives as nothing. Who would sincerely follow him? Killing the male fox? The Heavenly Fox clan would not say anything, and they would even come forward to find excuses for him. After all, this disaster was resolved so satisfactorily because of him. If he had not come forward, many more people would have died. However, he would never be close to the Celestial Fox clan, and he would even drift away. This was not what he wanted, so he was in a dilemma. There was no time. He had to make a choice, and not wait for the rules to kill him. In this cultivation world, no one was really clean. Everyone pursues the great Tao and immortality. If you block my path, I will push you away. It is a matter of course. He was like this, and so was Crow Ancestor. In Crow Ancestor's biography, he regretted that he had killed many people by mistake, but there was no right or wrong in the cultivation world. With his current strength, he had the ability to kill a Qianxiu in an instant. Who was it? The 29 cultivation creatures present, whether human or celestial fox, almost all of them thought that in this situation, it was best to leave the choice to heaven's will, because only in this way would no one complain. But some people did not think so. Just as Lu Xiaoyi was about to make a move, a celestial fox young god Qianxiu. He flew to the middle of the humans and the foxes. Lord, Qianxiu Xiu the inside story, not to mention right or wrong. Xiu be friends. Xiu the Heavenly Fox clan has always liked peace and is generous and hospitable. Since the beginning of our clan, we have never disappointed or embarrassed our true friends. Xiu. He clasped his hands again. Hu Qiao, Minglang. Welcome my friends on behalf of my clan head. Xiu. Accompanying his limp body was a gorgeous ball of Tao vanishing smoke and fire. Some of the heavenly foxes were already crying out loud, unable to contain their grief. They all knew that Hu Qiao had used the method of suicide to give both sides a way out. A way out was extremely important to the heavenly fox race. Among the human half-immortals, some sighed, some shook their heads, and didn't say anything. Now that the fox did this, how could they still have the face to make trouble for the heavenly fox? This time, 9 humans had died in the puppet formation, and 1 heavenly fox had died. Actually, in terms of numbers, the humans had suffered a great loss. It was hard to say whether or not the remaining human half-immortals would have any thoughts in their hearts. Even if those 9 people did deserve to be killed, it was also a fact that humans were disgraced in this incident, and they might not have been like this in the first place. If he didn't say anything now, once the news got out, there would be a knot in his heart. There would be dissatisfaction, and there would be people who would sow discord between them. Under such circumstances, the so-called fair selection of 15 Qian cultivators was somewhat cruel to the humans. There was no such thing as absolute fairness. There was only relative fairness. In that case, Hu Qiao taking the initiative to eliminate the calamity was relatively fair. At this point, among the remaining 8 half-immortals, no one was dissatisfied with the heavenly fox. Not only them, but also the orthodoxies, realms, friends, and social circles behind them. In the heavenly fox race, females flourished and males declined. There were very few male foxes who could walk to the end, but it was not absolute. No one knew whether this was his own idea. Was he taking the initiative to sacrifice for the race? Or was he being pressured and acting under the orders of the higher-ups? If it was the former, then this race was very terrifying. Of course, it was also very worthy of respect. No one was willing to be enemies with such a race. Aunt Chi's expression didn't change. She felt sad in her heart, but she couldn't show it. She didn't give such an order. Among the heavenly foxes, no one would give such an order to their juniors. But when Hu Qiao walked out, she had guessed what he was going to do. But she didn't stop him. This was what made her feel the most bitter. If she had to rely on her juniors to obtain a future for her race, she would rather lead her race to fight to the death. But she was also clear that Hu Qiao's death couldn't be in vain. Now, if she showed any sadness, dissatisfaction, or venting, it would destroy the situation that Hu Qiao fought for with great difficulty. So, she could only smile and lead the guests with her bare hands. Macho Road, Forest Fox secluded path welcomes everyone. If you have any questions, don't hide anything and tell us everything. Lu Xiaoyi finally relaxed. His problem was solved by an unknown little fox. It made him sigh with emotion and understand a truth. Small people could also play a big role and even create history. It was also because of this incident that he had a higher opinion of the heavenly fox race. Although their battle strength wasn't too amazing, the survival ability of a race didn't only depend on battle strength. There were many other things. For example, illusions, wisdom, and this kind of rare race solidarity. The immortal court made things difficult for the heavenly fox race in every possible way. Fortunately, they were few in number. Otherwise, who wouldn't be afraid of this power? It was also reasonable for the crow ancestor to choose the fox ancestor. This was indeed a race that was worth entrusting. The problem was, what did the crow ancestor entrust them with? This seemingly ordinary expansion of the illusory realm ended with the deaths of 9 human half-fairies and 2 heavenly foxes. In terms of numbers, this was obviously not equal. However, Hu Qiao's salute had forcefully pulled this disparity back to parity. Small people also had great wisdom. Chapter 2091. Because the puppet formation had reached a balance between yin and yang, time no longer flowed, as if it had stopped. The cultivators all knew that if they persisted like this for a while, the puppet formation would gradually dissipate, and everyone would regain their freedom. Lu Xiaoyi looked around. He did not recognize the other 7 human half-immortals around him, but that was normal. There were too many half-immortals in the universe's cultivation world. The universe was in chaos, and all sorts of monsters had appeared. It was normal that he did not recognize them. At the very least, the 8 of them had a bottom line. No matter what the reason was, they were not pulled into the circle by the other 9 people, which meant that they had their merits. They were here to join in the fun, and not to make a plan. Thus, he asked, who knows the origin of this puppet formation? Which of the lords above did this? I'll be honest. If it really activated the program to erase us, it would definitely choose between the 8 of us and the male fox. If we were to compare luck, who would have the confidence? Everyone had fought together before, so they had a bit of friendship. At the very least, they had the desire to communicate with each other. Originally, during these years of waiting, they had each taken care of their own matters. None of them had thought that there would be a so-called circle here. One of the half-immortals was indignant. Those damned old fogies. They did not leak any information before making a move, but once the puppet formation appeared, they used us as the scapegoat. They really deserve to die. Who knows which immortal's work is this puppet formation? I think that the old immortal above this immortal formation would have at least a few tricks up his sleeves. Fellow Taoist, instead of looking for which immortal's work it is, why don't you think about the background of those 9 people? In any case, I'm not familiar with them. Do any of you know them? Everyone chimed in. No one would hide these secrets in their hearts. Since they might cause trouble for the power behind these people in the future, it was better to reveal it. After all, the more people there were, the more courage there was. After this exchange, 4 of the 9 people were recognized. Their orthodoxies were different, and it was difficult to find the connection between them. They could only put it aside and wait for the matter to ferment. In the midst of their discussion, the pyrolite array disappeared. Since there was an invitation from the heavenly fox, no one would reject such kindness. They still had to ask what they wanted to ask, but they wouldn't pester the heavenly fox endlessly. The 8 of them were led into the real spirit fox secluded realm. Each of them had their own residence arranged for them. It could be said that no discord, no concord. Lu Xiaoyi hadn't even finished drinking a cup of tea in his own residence when the 2 beauties leisurely walked over. In front of him was little Ho, whose tail had been touched by him. The one behind him was older and peerless. Xiaosu's behavior was very polite, different from before when she would bite at the slightest provocation. She was very gentle and shy, but Lu Xiaoyi knew that she was faking it. This little guy knew how to bite. He had to be careful of her little white teeth. This is the clan leader of my heavenly fox clan, Aunt Chi. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. Auntie. Little Sleepyhead retreated in defeat. She realized that there was no one in the universe that this guy was afraid of. It made sense. Even the sole avatar of his ancestor, Crow Ancestor, was killed without hesitation. That was the Tao seat of a golden immortal. What else in this world could make him afraid? He didn't dare to joke around. She also didn't dare to stay here for too long. To be honest, if Aunt Chi hadn't dragged her here to make an introduction, she wouldn't have wanted to stay by this guy's side for a second longer. She was afraid that she would be recognized and pestered endlessly. She dared to bet that if that day really came, Aunt Chi would definitely push her out to be the scapegoat. Aunt Chi looked at the guy in front of her with a smile. Compared to the scene 20,000 years ago, it was as if the old scene was right in front of her. He still didn't care, still spoke without thinking, and still acted without restraint. Even his combat strength made her unable to tell who was better. Back then, that person was unparalleled in the exterior realm. He was more ostentatious and did whatever he wanted. But the guy in front of her was much more low-key. He didn't make a sound and didn't show himself. He killed a half-immortal in one round, and they were all great degeneration above the 3rd decay. He killed 5 in a row. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to attract too much attention, it wouldn't be a problem for him to kill all 9 of them. 20,000 years ago, the Heavenly Fox clan changed their living environment because of that person. Now, another person appeared 20,000 years later, and the Heavenly Fox clan bumped into him again. Who knew what would happen? It was just that last time. She was the link. This time, it was Xiao Yin. Humph, with her fiery eyes. Did that little fox think that she couldn't see anything? What a sweet call. It's just that your words don't match your heart. It's Xiao Yi, right? Aunt Chi, I won't say any words of gratitude. The relationship between our 2 families has been maintained for more than 20,000 years. There's no need to be polite. Aunt Chi, I want to know something. In exchange, I will also tell you some stories. Do you think this is fair? Lu Xiaoyi nodded repeatedly. This was the Crow ancestor's former lover. She was also one of the few people that the Crow ancestor often came into contact with after he became a half-immortal. About the process of the Crow ancestor's thought changes before and after he became an immortal, he could roughly guess the context here. Now, he had realized that the Crow ancestor didn't just make a start when he came to the lower realm. He also had a long-term consideration and might even have a plan. He had his own ideas, but he was also willing to accept the opinions of others. However, these secrets couldn't be found in the Sword Tao tablet, let alone in Xinyuan. Could it be hidden in the Forest Fox netherworld? Aunt Chi sat down and poured tea. In the hazy steam, it was as if she had become unreal. When she began to tell a long history, It was as if time had turned back. This was also a kind of illusory ability. Just like how others had their own aura, she had her own illusion. However, she didn't have any evil intentions, and it wouldn't affect people like Lu Xiaoyi. I know what you want to hear. Let's not talk about those unimportant things. Let's start from the time before and after he became an immortal. I remember that year. He came back from the Heaven's Choice continent and came to the exterior realm. We once had a deep talk. This was the first time Lu Xiaoyi heard about the Crow ancestors passed from someone close to him. There were many things that he didn't know and didn't write in the biography. He didn't dare to leave it in words. He could only feel it, but couldn't say it out loud. Fortunately, the heavenly axiom was not as strict as it used to be. The changes in the universe involved too many rules to be controlled. In Hu Qiqi's description, the Crow ancestor's thought process before he became an immortal began to become clear. What was he worried about? What did he want to resist? What was he dissatisfied with? What did he want to change? Obviously, the Crow ancestor had a premonition that he would succeed in becoming an immortal. At the same time, he also had a premonition that there would be greater challenges after he became an immortal. So, it wasn't that he didn't do anything. These were things that he would never be able to hear anywhere else. He was very glad that he came here after all. He could make his plan more perfect and have a higher possibility of success. Chapter 2092. Lu Xiaoyi stayed at Macho Road, but he wasn't free. Heart plate, what's going on? There are countless similar Tao state transfer techniques in the cultivation world, especially in the Taoist category. Why is everyone targeting you now? If it's just a rumor, how many people in the half-immortal realm would believe such nonsense? Or, does the Heavenly Fox clan really have a similar ability in this aspect? Aunt Chi smiled bitterly. There's no smoke without fire. There must be light in the white night. There are indeed countless transfer techniques in the cultivation world that can refine a cultivator's lifetime of learning in a certain direction. For example, cultivation, soul, memory, all can be done. In this aspect, my Heavenly Fox clan may not be as good as the Taoist in this aspect, but the extraction of the Tao state is different. Aunt Chi sighed. Regarding the extraction and refinement of the Tao state, it doesn't have a practical target like elemental energy, magical energy, or physical strength. For example, magical energy is something that exists and has a definite volume. It flows in the cultivator's body, so there's a relatively fixed target for extraction and refinement. The Tao state is different. It can't be seen or touched and only exists in the cultivator's mind. It's an ideological thing. Then, the most important step is how to collect the complete information of the Tao state. In the future, it'll be easier to condense and transfer it. In the cultivation world, the problem of collecting spiritual memories is the most difficult. For example, your memories, your cultivation experience, and the most difficult part is the combination of memory fragments and understanding of the Tao state. Lu Xiaoyi seemed to understand. Annie Chi, you mean to pass the dreamlands? Hu Qiqi nodded. That's right. The so-called success is in the dreamlands, and the troubles are also in the dreamlands. In terms of collecting spiritual memories of the cultivator's consciousness and understanding, the dreamlands is the most efficient, the least likely to be distorted, and the least likely to be resisted. It's also the least likely to be deliberately set up a trap. Other methods, such as the Taoist invasion and the Buddhist pressure, would cause the cultivator to subconsciously develop reverse psychology. Therefore, the consciousness information they received was likely to be incomplete, scattered, and pieced together. Therefore, there was no meaning to the Taoist inheritance. Only the dreamlands could perfectly replicate a cultivator's understanding of Tao state without them noticing. There was no revulsion, no resistance. Just like when they were displaying their Tao state in the dreamlands, they wouldn't realize that their precious understanding had been stolen by someone else. Of course, stealing wasn't the right word. It could only be called copying. The heart compass duplicated these understandings. In fact, the cultivator himself did not lose anything. It was not as if he had lost his own understandings. As for why we must kill, that's the problem of gathering and transferring these duplicates. In this aspect, The Taoists and Buddhists are far more proficient than us celestial foxes. Lu Xiaoyi let out a long breath. I understand now. The heart compass stealing a cultivator's understanding of Tao state is a complicated process. But one of the key points is how to perfectly collect these understandings of Tao state. The dreamlands is the best way to do so. The celestial foxes are also the race most proficient in the dreamlands in the universe cultivation world. Huchichi nodded and said helplessly, this is not difficult to understand. You see, as long as I give you a hint, you will immediately understand. If it were other demigods, how could they not understand this? The celestial foxes are born with the dreamland's ability. With a history of millions of years, could it be that we have been making the heart compass since millions of years ago? The investigation of the heart plate by the exterior masters meant that they had deciphered the secrets of the heart plate. They understood the process of making the heart plate. Everything else was easy to explain, but how could the formation of the dreamland be done so silently and naturally without disturbing the chosen target? How could it be done so perfectly? This was a difficult task. So everyone here did not know that the celestial foxes were not involved in the heart compass incident at all? Of course they knew. They were just pretending to be ignorant. The purpose of coming here was not really to prove that the celestial foxes had played a role in it. They just wanted to get the method to instantly create the dreamlands. If we give it to them, they will say after studying it, This matter has nothing to do with the celestial foxes. If we don't give it to them, they will always have an excuse to doubt us. They will not give up until they achieve their goal. They will not mind throwing the blame on the celestial foxes. Then, Xiaoyi, do you think we should give it to them? Lu Xiaoyi let out a long sigh. Of course not. Absolutely not. If we give them one, they will give them two. In the end, they can't stop talking. Then, these people will use the dreamlands to do evil. In the end, the celestial foxes who had nothing to do with this matter slowly became involved. In the end, they became the driving force behind the plundering of the heart compass incident. They did not get any benefits and had a lot of karma. They might even become the target of the heavenly axioms purge. Huchichi sighed softly. You see, that's the reason. An ordinary man is innocent, but he has jade in his pocket. The celestial foxes are terrible because of their innate supernatural powers. Our unique supernatural powers are related to the Tao realm thieves. Thus, we are suspected and forced to hand it over. What does it matter if we hand it over or not? If we don't hand it over, we might become enemies with some cultivators. If we hand it over, we will become enemies with the heavenly axiom. We can only refuse to hand it over and must not hand it over. Not to mention other things. Just this innate supernatural power has been forced out. What is the value of the celestial fox's survival? Lu Xiaoyi still had a problem. His train of thought was always different from others. Aunt Shi, let's not talk about motives and facts. Let's just analyze it from a technical point of view. Then, do you think that the celestial fox's ability in the dreamland is irreplaceable? Could there be other ways to achieve the same effect? Huchichi shook her head bitterly. This is also what we are very depressed about. We have also studied the heart compass in private and found that this thing's creation of the dreamland seems to be something that no other orthodoxy can do except for us. Anyway, we don't know. Those cultivators outside also don't know. Otherwise, they wouldn't just come here. Of course, the immortal court's upper realm is another matter. We don't know about it. Lu Xiaoyi pondered and said, Aunt Shi, there's something I don't know if I should ask. Your relationship with the Crow ancestor is the cornerstone of our alliance. Until now, it has been indestructible. Xiaoyi, I am also willing to continue this alliance. Since we are in an alliance, we have to face it together and be honest with each other. I will be honest. In the millions of years of history of the celestial foxes, has there ever been a branch that split off? You have to know that there is no eternal orthodoxy in this world. There is no eternal realm. Of course, there is no eternal family. Many ants in a group, and eagles fly alone. Don't tell me that the celestial foxes have been united for millions of years. That's impossible. Chapter 2093. Lu Xiaoyi's words made Huchichi fall into silence. Some things, no matter how embarrassing it was, didn't mean that they didn't exist. It might be the secret of the clan, and it would be painful to tear it apart, but you couldn't pretend that you didn't know. After a long silence, Huchichi sighed. Yes, it was also the only time the Heavenly Fox clan had done so. 1,000,000 years ago, the Heavenly Fox clan was demoted to the exterior Heavenly Circle because of the wrong position in the fight for the universe. But before that, our Fox clan was still very prosperous in the Forest Fox path in the main world. Because we envied the cultivation civilization of humans, we were very close to them at that time. The Forest Fox path wasn't a forbidden area, and there were countless guests and friends, especially you humans. Of course, human cultivators in the cultivation world of the universe at that time weren't as common as now. When we came into contact with them, there were grievances involved, and it couldn't be severed. Among all the relationships, the most troublesome one was the marriage between humans and the Heavenly Fox clan. Because of the conditions of the Heavenly Fox clan, the Heavenly Fox clan became the target of human cultivators like a flock of ducks. Because of this, many human fox species were born. Lu Xiaoyi coughed dryly. The mess in the lower three paths was really not differentiated by age and race. Humans were indeed bad, including Lu Xiaoyi. But the Heavenly Fox clan might not be innocent. This was a matter that took two hands to clap. But the problem was, well, are they humans or foxes? Or human foxes? Huchichi was also very embarrassed, but since she had started, she had to continue. In the cultivation world, it's actually very difficult for different clans to conceive the next generation, so such situations were rare in the beginning. But as time passed, reproduction after the second and third generation became very easy. In fact, we can't say for sure whether the bloodline of these descendants is more human or Heavenly Fox. This completely depends on the bloodline characteristics of their parents, and then all the way back. Coupled with the unpredictability of the mystery in the womb, it's a bad debt in the end. Thousands of years later, in the Forest Fox path, the pure Heavenly Fox clan became the minority, and more of them were the fox people who had been passed down for many generations. It was also at that time that we Heavenly Foxes felt the danger of our bloodline. If we didn't control it, the Foxmen might become more and more prosperous, while we, the true Heavenly Foxes, might become extinct. At that time, the Heavenly Fox clan had a lot of doubts about whether there was a deliberate push by a certain force. The reason why the Heavenly Foxes took the wrong side in the universe war was because the Heavenly Foxes began to have doubts and distrust towards humans. They believed that humans were using this method to cut off the bloodline of the Heavenly Foxes. Lu Xiaoyi was speechless. Humans were capable of doing such things. Perhaps it was intentional, perhaps it was unintentional. Time had passed, so who could say for sure? At that time, the Forest Fox path was in a dilemma. We didn't know how to deal with the relationship between the Heavenly Foxes and the Foxmen. Of course, it was impossible to exterminate them all. After all, these Foxmen had the bloodline of the Heavenly Fox. However, it was also wrong to remain indifferent. This would corrode the survival foundation of the true Fox clan. In the end, the solution was very unexpected. Because of the wrong side of the Fox clan, the pure Heavenly Foxes were demoted to the exterior Heavenly realm. Only the Foxmen were left in the Forest Fox path. The Immortal Court was also worried about them. They were worried that if they recuperated in a place like the Forest Fox path, they would recover the abilities of the true Heavenly Foxes sooner or later. Therefore, they decided to move them out to a more normal world. This was a story from 1,000,000 years ago. After 1,000,000 years, if the Foxmen continued to marry and reproduce with humans, there wouldn't be any Heavenly Fox bloodline left. Of course, it would be impossible for them to have the Heavenly Fox dreamland. The Heavenly Fox clan in the exterior Heavenly realm couldn't descend to the mortal world for 1,000,000 years. They gradually lost track of them and didn't have the mood to pay attention to them. Therefore, if there was a group that might have the ability to perform the dreamland, the Foxmen might have it. However, I estimate that even if they had the ability to perform the dreamland, there would be very few of them. It would be impossible for them to form a large scale. Lu Xiaoyi was very curious. About the Foxmen, what kind of abilities do they have? What's the difference between this group and humans or Heavenly Foxes? It's been 1,000,000 years. Can the Heavenly Fox clan's dreamland still be passed down? Uchichi said, it's all from 1,000,000 years ago. Even for us, it's too long ago. No one has really experienced it. We haven't even seen their existence. What I'm talking about is just something passed down orally by the Foxmen. The Foxmen's appearance is similar to humans. They have a special characteristic. They don't have the ability to transform into heavenly foxes. They can only appear in human form for the rest of their lives, regardless of their realm. Their abilities are different from each other. Some can awaken more heavenly fox abilities, while some can't. This is probably the main reason why they can't cultivate. Only a very small number of them can gradually awaken the heavenly fox dreamland ability in the process of cultivation. In theory, as the bloodline gets thinner, this possibility becomes smaller and smaller. I'm not sure about their current living environment. If they're in a state where they live together with normal humans, after 1,000,000 years of dilution, what ability would they have left? They're no different from normal humans. Therefore, this is why we never mention them and why we don't think that they have such a possibility. 1,000,000 years is enough to change everything. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. It seemed that this was indeed the case. Back then, the Immortals demoted the Heavenly Foxes to the exterior realm and released the Foxmen to the normal cultivation realm. In order to suppress the development of the Foxmen, they had to be released into the huge human society. How could they be allowed to reproduce alone? This possibility was really not big. He didn't want to discuss this problem anymore because it couldn't be solved. If the Foxmen were really causing trouble, could he run over and exterminate them? Then what about your Heavenly Fox clan now? It can't be like this forever, right? Endless entanglement and harassment is always very troublesome. Uchichi nodded. We're also thinking about it. It's better to let it go than to block it. It's just that it's difficult to come up with a foolproof plan on how to let it go. Xiaoyi is experienced and knowledgeable. Do you have any good suggestions? Lu Xiaoyi scratched his head. How could he have any good ideas? In fact, he didn't come to Macho Road with the intention of solving the problem. He came here simply to find out what the Crow ancestors' backup plan was for dealing with the Heavenly Fox clan. Secondly, it was to solve the problem of the foxes. This was a vicious rumor. How to dispel the rumor was a universal problem. Time was the best way to dispel the rumor. The problem was that what they lacked the most now was time. Chapter 2094. Lu Xiaoyi stayed on Macho Road because there were the most beautiful fox girls and the most exquisite scenery in the world. Although it couldn't be compared to the inside-outside scenic sky, it had more spiritual vigor than other places in the universe. He had a feeling that he should be able to take a step forward. Sun God was a hurdle that he had to cross. The other 7 half-immortals would occasionally communicate with each other. After Hu Qiao's sacrifice, because of the pride of the half-immortals, they couldn't be rude and use force here. The death of a fox in exchange for the gratitude of 8 human half-immortals, this deal was worth it. You couldn't say anything because who could guarantee that the choice of the array wouldn't be oneself? There were already a few half-immortals who chose to leave. They were all great cultivators who understood the reason. Lu Xiaoyi could understand. How could they be stubborn? Originally, they wanted to take a share of the loot because they had more people, but they didn't expect that those old half-immortals had other intentions. As a result, staying in the forest fox realm was useless now. This was the cultivation world. Those who were truly evil were definitely in the minority, and there weren't many who were completely open and aboveboard. Most of them were people who constantly changed with the environment, with the time, and with the general trend. Previously, the general trend was that everyone came together to find trouble with the Heavenly Fox. Now, the general trend was that they couldn't find trouble with the Heavenly Fox, so they could only show their good side. It wasn't that they turned over a new leaf, but that the situation forced them. In a different environment, in a different time, perhaps they would still be a group of people who swayed left and right. They would find an opportunity to change their roles between good and evil, and then they might fall into the trap of another conspiracy again. Whether it was Hu Qiqi or Lu Xiaoyi, they didn't mention any information about the fox orcs to these people. This was their principle and also their bottom line. But Lu Xiaoyi sometimes thought, if there was really a problem with the fox orcs, Could such a secret be hidden forever? What happened a million years ago was indeed very far away now. But don't forget, there were many existences in the cultivation world of the universe that had been passed down for a long time. And there was also the immortal court. How could it really be silent? Although the celestial fox did not know how to deal with the rumor that the secret of the heart compass was in the celestial fox, the celestial fox knew very well that it should not do anything. It should not defend itself, not stand out, and deal with it coldly. This was the essence of dealing with rumors. The more you cared about it, the more it would spread, and the more it would burn. In the end, the rumor would become the truth. The human half-immortals left one by one. In the end, only Lu Xiaoyi was left here. He was still reluctant to part with the flowers. He slowly mixed with the flower foxes and played with them. The only thing that made him feel strange was that Xiao Wu, the little white fox that should have appeared, was nowhere to be seen. Was she avoiding him on purpose? Or was it really, as Hu Qiqi said, that he was preparing to become an upper realm six-tailed beast? According to the foxes, if one's foundation was strong enough, after losing several tails in battle and then growing them back, it was very likely that they would grow one more tail. He didn't know if it was true. The purpose of staying here was to find a trace of the crow ancestor in the dreamland of the heavenly fox, just like the dreamland of the Mu Bei in the main world. But to his disappointment, he found nothing here. He began to doubt himself. Perhaps the crow ancestor really did not want to leave anything behind in the human world? This was also more in line with his temperament. He wouldn't be endless. When the other half-immortals left and he found nothing in the dreamland, he knew that this was not a place to stay for long. After staying here for 10 years, he should have discovered what he should have discovered long ago. He just didn't want to leave any regrets. He was very happy that the crow ancestor didn't leave anything behind. The old fellow was very tactful. Hu Qiqi set up a banquet to send him off. She raised her cup and said, "Xiaoyi, if Xinyuan does anything in the future, don't forget about my heavenly fox clan. Whether it's going to the fifth ring or other places, it's very convenient. If the heavenly fox clan has any trouble in the future, I will also open my mouth to you without hesitation." Just like 20,000 years ago. Lu Xiaoyi drank his cup in one gulp. Of course, this is the tacit understanding between our clans. With the Heavenly Fox clan, Xuanyuan's mountain gate in the main world will be absolutely safe. Let's look out for each other. I hope that there will be a good result after the change of the era. Hu Qiqi looked at him. This little guy's mouth was full of beautiful words, but he was somewhat insincere. He only mentioned the mountain gate in the main world. In fact, he was talking about those trivial matters in the lower realm. And these matters were no longer important in the current changes of the universe. Without the Heavenly Fox clan, what could they do with the fifth ring's appeal in the eastern sky? The key was at the half-immortal level. Before and after the change of the era, the great Tao would change and the immortal court would be shaken. He didn't talk much about these. Hu Qiqi knew that it wasn't that he didn't trust the Heavenly Fox clan. It was more likely that he had a big plan, so he didn't want to be implicated. He was just like that damn ancestor of his. He usually talked a lot of nonsense, but he didn't say a word about what he really wanted to do. He wanted to take it all on himself. This was a very precious quality. It was also a rare friend. But, Xiaoyi, you have to know the principle of many people gathering firewood to make the fire stronger. One person's light can't illuminate the entire universe. Even your Xuanyuan's damn ancestor can't. Lu Xiaoyi smiled and nodded. I agree with this point of view. Aunt Qi, don't worry. I'm not interested in burning myself to illuminate the night like that damn ancestor. I prefer to prepare more torches and fill them with oil in the wilderness. Hu Qiqi was very serious. Xiaoyi, you have to know that at this time, it's not up to you to say that it doesn't matter. Everyone's glory is glory, and everyone's loss is loss. Who can really stay out of it? Everyone, every force, and every race should do their part. The Heavenly Fox clan isn't afraid of danger or bloodshed, but we're afraid of not having a direction. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. Aunt Qi, I understand what you mean, but please understand my current difficulties. No one can make an accurate judgment about the future of the universe and the change of the era. I don't, and no one in the main world does. There's no one in the lower realm, and it's the same for the immortal court. Everyone is crossing the river by feeling the stones. So if you say that I have a particularly clear plan now, you're thinking too highly of me. Right now, I'm constantly adjusting step by step. I also have to wipe my butt clean from time to time. I can't even use paper. I have to brush with water and scrape with a knife. I'm just afraid that I'll leave behind feces that people will follow the smell. I can't wait to turn my intestines over and rub them with vinegar. It's easier to correct mistakes if one person goes alone, and the consequences won't be too serious. It won't work if there are too many people. It's hard to turn around if the ship is too big. But I promise you, if one day I need to call for help, the Heavenly Fox clan will definitely be one of the first friends I think of. Uchichi reluctantly agreed. She also knew that it was difficult to involve real changes now. Lu Xiaoyi thought for a while. Aunt Chi, there's a Kuandao union in the main world. I don't know if you've heard of it. In fact, it's not just about women's rights. It also includes many other aspects, such as nature's rights, the rights of various races, and so on. As a non-human and also a member of the Kuandao Union, I think that the Heavenly Fox clan can consider joining this union. Perhaps it will have an unexpected role in the future. Chapter 2095. Uchichi had also heard of this Kuan Cultivator Universe Union that Lu Xiaoyi mentioned. In recent years, it seemed to have developed very quickly. It was in full swing, but she didn't have a deep understanding of this. She always thought that it was just the nonsense of the Kuan cultivators. It had been a farce for tens of thousands of years, and she didn't see any special results. But now that she heard Lu Xiaoyi's words, it seemed that there were some unknown things. It didn't seem impossible for it to coincide with the change of the era. She remembered his words and returned the favor. Xiaoyi, the change of the Great Tao doesn't have a big impact on us monster beasts, but it's very important for you humans. I don't know much about this, and it's not deep enough, so I can't say much. But your Grandmaster mentioned to me by chance during a chat that some of the current 36 innate Great Taoists don't live up to their names. It's not that they aren't qualified, but the history of cultivation is changing, and so is the universe. Why are the 36 Great Taoists that never change? He traveled around the Heaven's Choice continent for thousands of years and almost stepped on every innate and postnatal Great Tao tablet. That's why he said this. I think there's some basis for it. Lu Xiaoyi was very interested in this point. What did the old guy say? Uchichi glared at him. This guy really didn't have any respect for her sword ancestor. But she also knew that respect wasn't something that was spoken of. She could only say that the two of them were very similar in this point. They both had stinky mouths. In his opinion, there are many repetitive Great Taoists in the current innate Great Tao. In fact, they can be simplified and combined, but he didn't specifically point to anyone. I guess that the Great Tao masters of these Great Taoists were still around, so he didn't dare to speak rashly. But he has some expectations for new Great Taoists, such as the Devouring Great Tao, the Heavenly Tribulation Great Tao, and even our Heavenly Fox's Illusory Dream Tao. I don't know what you think, but if you want to have some achievements when the era changes in the future, you should create new Great Taoists in the new era. This is the safest shortcut to gain a foothold. Lu Xiaoyi closed his eyes and pondered. This Aunt Chi finally said a few words that were useful to him. It had to be said that there was a difference in the way he and Crow thought. The Crow ancestor favored Devour, Heavenly Tribulation, and Illusory Dream, while he chose Stars and Balance. This did not mean that the two of them had completely different ideas. There would be many changes in the Great Tao, and it was likely that there would be more than the 5 that they had judged. It was just that their focus was different. At the very least, they had one thing in common, and that was that they did not take the Sword Tao into consideration. This was a true swordsman's way of thinking. Her husband would never understand it. He would never understand what a real act was. Even though I'm not in it, I can still kick you out at any time. The greatness of the Tao lies in the fact that it cannot be let go. If you use the innate Tao's framework to restrict it, the structure will be too small. The 3 new innate Taoists chosen by the Crow ancestor were very interesting. From them, one could easily tell his cultivation philosophy, which was the survival of the fittest. The core concept of devour was that all Daos could be fused together when they reached the pinnacle, and they would definitely be fused together. This caused all innate Daos to be in an unstable state because if you were weak, you would be swallowed and replaced. In other words, he had set an evaluation for all innate Daos. No one was an eternal innate, and if you could not keep up with the times, you would be eliminated. In other words, the future innate Daos would not be fixed. This idea was too advanced, too radical, but it was completely in line with Li Wuya's personality. Heavenly tribulation. If devour targeted the innate Daos, then heavenly tribulation targeted the immortals. In the current cultivation world, the immortals had an endless lifespan. Excluding the unnatural deaths, they could basically live the same life as the universe. They could live a leisurely life without any goals or pressure, and of course, there was no motivation. The positions were all fixed, and there was no point in fighting for it. Whatever Dao you fused with, whatever Dao you were, a Dao realm or golden immortal, you could forget about it. With heavenly tribulations, immortals were no longer safe. They had to face tribulations every few years, minor ones, major ones, and so on. The higher one's Dao rank was, the more ferocious the tribulations would be. Therefore, one had to consider carefully whether or not one could withstand these tribulations after painstakingly climbing up the ladder. How many times could one withstand them? Combining devour and heavenly tribulation. This was the new rule of the great Tao. It meant that immortal ascension was not the end. If one did not work hard, one might be struck by lightning and die. If one worked hard, one could also rise to true immortal, golden immortal, or even zenith heaven golden immortal, because one could devour. If these two great Daos could really become the innate Daos of the new era, the impact on the order of the great Tao and the immortal court system would be subversive. It would completely change the current cultivation situation. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. That old man is really evil. Aunt Chi, you didn't tell anyone about this, right? Hu Qiqi smiled bitterly. How would I dare to tell others about this? Back then, when I listened to him, I couldn't sleep or eat for a period of time. Later, I thought that it was just a kind of hope and thought, but who knew that the dead man really did it? From then on, I kept it in my heart. I couldn't forget it even if I wanted to. Instead, the more I forgot, the more I remembered it. Everyone says that my heavenly fox clan is good at illusions, but your dead sword ancestor tortured me with a nightmare for 20,000 years. Xiaoyi, you've been here for 10 years. Aunt Chi didn't tell you about this because I was afraid that if I reminded you, you would walk on the old path of your dead sword ancestor. But now, it seems that I can't not tell you. If I don't tell you, won't you think in this direction? So, before you leave, I decided to tell you. This is probably one of the reasons why that dead man mentioned it to me. He wants to use my heavenly fox clan's ability to judge people to judge who to tell or not to tell. Xiaoyi, you can't really be thinking about this, right? Generally speaking, if a great power wanted to leave behind some words of warning, they would use other methods. For example, a special test in a specific place, and then let the latecomers receive some kind of guidance. It was very rare to use other people to transmit messages. This way, it could be passed down for a long time without worrying about loss. But there was a disadvantage. It was very difficult to judge the receiver's temperament and ability, and it was even more difficult to decide when to transmit such a message. Relying on other people's rumors had this advantage. For example, Hu Qiqi felt that this Lu Xiaoyi was worth entrusting. He was reliable and not flamboyant, but he was ruthless and merciless. He could kill people without batting an eyelid. He could accomplish his goals silently. For example, his performance in the array was almost perfect. It fully confirmed his reputation in the universe's cultivation world. Therefore, Hu Qiqi hesitated for a long time before finally deciding to follow Li Wuya's wishes and pass on his words, even if she still didn't think that the dead man's plan would succeed. Chapter 2096. Lu Xiaoyi smiled. Don't worry, Aunt Chi. I am me, and he is him. He has his plan, and I have my thoughts. How can it be completely the same? But I feel that the old man's last great Tao proposal is not a joke. The Great Tao of Illusions is very meaningful. After the change of the era, there will be many great Taos similar to this kind of spiritual emptiness. As long as one is a cultivator, they will have dreams. Those without dreams are salted fish. This is the opposition between reality and illusion. It is the reflection of the future of dreams. So, why doesn't the Heavenly Fox clan work harder in this aspect? You have such good innate conditions. As long as you sublimate your magical powers, it's not impossible to get rid of the dream perspective of the Heavenly Fox, right? Although that old man likes to joke, as far as I know, he never jokes when it comes to great Tao cultivation. Lu Xiaoyi was not painting a pie in the sky. He really thought so. A person's thoughts were determined by their knowledge and vision. It was impossible to be omniscient and omnipotent. The Crow ancestor thought highly of these three great Taos before he became an immortal. His realm level was much higher than his current level, so it was not strange that he could see further and deeper. After all, he had thought about it for thousands of years and went through the big and small Tao tablets of Heaven's choice. If he did not gain as much as he did, then it would be a real joke. But he was not bad either. He had 2 new directions in less than 3,000 years of life. It was not bad. Looking at Lu Xiaoyi's serious eyes, Hu Chi-Chi was also very tempted. It was not that she had not thought of this before, but she did not dare to expose the idea of the Heavenly Fox clan creating a great Tao of the Heavenly Fox clan. She was afraid of attracting jealousy. Looking at her expression, Lu Xiaoyi knew what she was thinking. She needed encouragement and stimulation. Lu Xiaoyi was very good at this. He could not take the normal path. I'm sure that the Great Tao of Illusions has the potential to become a great Tao of the Heavenly Fox clan. But whether it can succeed or not depends on the efforts of the cultivators in the lower realm. How big your heart is how wide your sky is. But it's really hard to say whether your Heavenly Fox clan will eat this cake or not. Let's not talk about those who are far away. Let's talk about the king of the beasts, the king of all beasts, the phoenix. They are good at fate. But whose great Tao of fate? It's humans. Is it true that the phoenix's Tao of fate is inferior to humans? Or is there some other reason? If you don't work hard, you will never know. Take the Great Tao of Illusions, for example. Many human half-immortals are studying its mysteries. Do you really think that those 17 half-immortals who came here before really came for the so-called heart compass? He was already a half-immortal, yet he still valued external objects so much. Was this reasonable? If it's not for the heart compass, if the heart compass is just a cover, then what is their goal? Aunt Chi, have you thought about it? Hu Chi-Chi was really surprised this time. The Heavenly Fox clan was very intelligent, but they had the problem of being in the dark under the lamp. She had to admit that this possibility was too high. Little E, what you're saying is that they've actually come to verify the illusory Grand Tao, under the guise of investigating the heart plate. Lu Xiaoyi did not explain. This kind of thing could not be explained. He let her think about it herself. The more she thought about it, the more she could not tolerate it. This was the best form of training. Of course, if the Heavenly Fox clan doesn't care, then just pretend I didn't say anything. It was his own intrinsic mystical ability, yet he allowed others to use it to establish their Tao and follow other people's rules. Perhaps in the future, the Heavenly Foxes would have to consider whether they had violated some of the rules of illusions when they dreamt. If you don't fight for the Great Tao, why should it fall into your family's hands? The change of the era is close at hand. This is an excellent opportunity for the Heavenly Foxes because others have to start from scratch if they want to start with the illusory Grand Tao. They don't have enough time, so it's very difficult for them to form a complete and flawless Great Tao system. You're different. How can you turn a blind eye to such a good opportunity? Hu Chi-Chi had completely fallen into a trap this time. Even if she knew that this fellow in front of her definitely had his own intentions for encouraging her to establish the illusory Grand Tao, this was not important. Compared to establishing a new Khanate Great Tao, nothing was important, because that meant that the Heavenly Fox clan would be stable for a long time. They would no longer have to live under someone else's roof. Instead, they would be one of the masters of this universe. What could be more desirable than this? No matter how great the price they had to pay, she was a little distracted. Little E, I have to think about it again. In fact, there was nothing to think about. Back then, Li Wuya had already pointed out the future path for them very clearly. It was just that they didn't have such big ambitions yet. Li Wuya's actions were firstly for friendship, and secondly, he wanted to get a reform helper for his descendants. To be able to think of this 20,000 years ago, who dared to say that he was not scheming? This old fellow was evil. Lu Xiaoyi raised his cup and drank. There's no hurry. Aunt Shi, take your time to think about it. After digging a hole and eating to his heart's content, he floated out and went straight to the exit of Wuchou Road. On the surface, he was still as carefree as before, but in fact, his heart was also in turmoil. Only now did he understand that the Crow ancestors' plan for the future was very deep. Perhaps it was not just his thoughts alone, but also those like-minded great Tao masters. However, they were in the minority after all. He did not dare to reveal these things. Once he did, he would cause a huge disaster. At the very least, wouldn't the immortal court turn the sky upside down? The mortals could no longer dawdle, and the great Tao was no longer unchanging. How could those old masters who had long been used to doing nothing endure this? Lu Xiaoyi actually had his own judgment about the changes in the great Tao of the future era. However, he was young after all and could not think so comprehensively. He was always vague about the future structure of the immortal court. He still did not know how to solve the old problem of the immortal court's metabolism. Perhaps in the future, as his vision improved, he would be able to think of these things, but he would lose precious time. On this point, the shit-stirring seniors had pointed out a direction for him. The problem he was facing now was how to make full use of the information he had obtained. Like the bamboo hat, that was the power of the Conservative Party. What was certain was that the Conservative Party would occupy the majority. After all, the 36 innate great Taoists were now mature. He just needed to prove it again. Not only would there be people competing for the new great Tao, but they would also face the problem of incomplete, not comprehensive, not systematic, and flawed great Tao. This required the most outstanding person to establish the new great Tao, and it would be best if it was his friend, because he could not hold too many positions at once. The reason why he was fully proficient in the 36 innate great Taoists now was because these great Taoists had their own fixed system. Most of the time, he only needed to learn and not create. Learning and creating were two different concepts that could not be mentioned in the same breath. Moreover, he already had his own direction, stars, and balance. He still had to complete the knowledge of more than 20 existing great Taoists. This pressure was not ordinary. After going through the people he knew, there were too few trustworthy and had extraordinary strength. After thinking about it, only Qing Xian seemed to be worth looking forward to. As for the others, they were either unfamiliar or lacking in ability. If he forced himself to do it, it would only be harmful. Chapter 2097. Lu Xiaoyi rushed out of the Macho Road and set his direction in a very strange place. Another mission from the Heavenly Eyes. Recently, the missions from the Heavenly Eyes were a bit frequent. It seemed that he had solved the Leap 8 Heavens Cauldron not long ago, and now this one came. The universe was chaotic, so it was normal that there were too many disputes. To be honest, he didn't dislike the existence of the Heavenly Eyes. He felt that there were many duties in the immortal court, and only the Heavenly Eyes could do something practical. Whether the immortal who managed the Heavenly Eyes was really for the stability of the universe, or to perform well before the change of the era to get the recognition of the heavenly way and add points for his future position, it was always good to be willing to do something. In any chaotic period, the maintenance of order was the most important. It was because of the maintenance of the Heavenly Eyes that although the universe was chaotic, there was a bottom line on the edge of control. If even this organization was gone in the end, it was hard to imagine how chaotic the universe would be. He was the enforcer of the Heavenly Eyes, so he had the responsibility to maintain all of this. He didn't deny that he wanted to perform better in front of the heavenly way and make his future path smoother, but it was also undeniable that he really wanted to do something. It could be seen from what happened in the Macho Road that under the pressure of the change of the era, half immortals sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain. Many of them didn't have clear principles. Time was pressing, and they were a bit anxious. In the last fight of the Order and the last fight, they didn't hesitate to fight with all their might. It was impossible for them to be as cautious as they were in the ordinary years. Were they wrong? They weren't wrong. This was the pain they had to go through before the change of the era. The mission of the Heavenly Eyes this time was still issued by the non-human group of the 4 immortal monarchs of the Heavenly Eyes. Last time, it was the Lord of Numinous Treasure, and this time, it was the ancient beast god's turn. Lu Xiaoyi could vaguely guess that these 2 non-human immortal monarchs and the 2 human immortal monarchs were against each other. What made him speechless was that he was favored by the non-human side, but they didn't accept him as a human. It seemed that there was nothing wrong with it. If these immortal monarchs knew what he and Crow Ancestor were thinking about during the change of the era, they would not only be embarrassed, but would also jump down and cut him down personally. The mission was very straightforward, asking him to go to the Green Mountains world to stop the human half-immortals from plundering the spirit of the natives. The Green Mountains world was the world where the human foxes lived. This was something that was going on at the same time. If it wasn't for Lu Xiaoyi's meticulousness, he wouldn't have been able to get information about the fox orcs from Aunt Chi. At that time, even if he had heard about it, he wouldn't have really investigated it. To the heavenly foxes, the fox orcs were also their bloodline. Of course, they should shoulder all the responsibilities. It was impossible for them to push the highest level of trouble in the cultivation world to an ordinary group like the fox orcs. Since the half-immortals have come to the Wuchou Road, it is inevitable that another group of people will find the Green Mountains world around them. This is the bloodline between human beings and monsters. For the Heavenly Eye, it will not care about the dispute between the half-immortals of human beings and the heavenly foxes, because both sides have the top-level half-immortals of the human world. However, they would definitely care about the troubles between the human half-celestial and the human fox. After all, this was like a dog trying to catch a mouse. The mouse was weak, so how could it resist the pressure of the human half-celestial? The ancient beast god was naturally in charge of the disputes between humans and demonic beasts. Therefore, he ordered Lu Xiaoyi to go there. He was strong and had a close relationship with the demonic beasts. He was the best candidate. The previous Sky Eyes mission was the numinous treasure cauldron of the 8 heavens. This time, it was the Fox tribe bloodline. The 2 Sky Eyes immortal lords were very comfortable using Lu Xiaoyi. Of course, Lu Xiaoyi did not dislike it. He advocated freedom and also maintained order. These were not contradictory, because only freedom under order was real freedom. On this point, he was different from many unrestrained liberals. Such thinking came from the other world, and he felt it was very reasonable. The Green Mountains world was in the northern sky, one in the south and the other in the north. It seemed that the immortals had put a lot of effort to settle these heavenly foxes. At least in terms of distance, they were at 2 extremes. It was impossible to fly purely in the physical space, even for a great cultivator like a half-immortal. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoyi did not need it. Cosmic anomalies like the black hole, the white hole, the wormhole, and the gray hole, after being changed by the Mighty One, had a common feature. They could communicate with the entire universe, provided that you could find this place. The interior-exterior sky and the worry-free road were such places. Lu Xiaoyi now knew these 3 places very well, which basically solved his problem of moving around a large area in the universe. This was the basic skill of a shit stirrer. He had to go where there was shit, so that he could stir up fresh and hot shit. The ancient beast god's mission was vague. Judging from the content, it should be that the half-immortals had just arrived and had not caused any consequences. From the tone of the ancient beast god, he did not want this incident to be mixed with too much blood, so he mainly tried to persuade them. After all, the human fox tribe was weak. Under the pressure of the half-immortals, they basically had no room to fight back. Therefore, for him, he had to speed up. If he wanted to solve this peacefully, he could not be late. Otherwise, he would have made a big mistake. How could it be resolved easily? He was good at adding fuel to the fire, but when it came to relations, he was not good enough. In the message, there was a general introduction of the fox tribe. In the millions of years after leaving the forest fox path, the fox tribe had developed from a small group of less than 10,000 people to a large group of tens of millions of people. Of course, in the process, they had integrated with the real indigenous people of the Green Mountains. Now, there was no distinction between the so-called local and foreign races. They had completely become a whole. In the historical records, there was no legend of the so-called celestial fox. 1,000,000 years was enough for the mortal world to annihilate everything. The Green Mountains was a small cultivation world. It was a medium-level spiritual opportunity with a population of about 10 million people. Most of them had the bloodline of the celestial fox, but it was so thin that it was almost undetectable. It was impossible to rely on the power of such bloodline to awaken the celestial fox's original magical power. The cultivation world here stopped at the Yuanying level. Limited by the spiritual opportunity, it did not support higher levels. According to the information of the Eye of Heaven, the number of half-immortals who went to the Green Mountains was unknown, but there was definitely more than one. As for the specific number, because it was still increasing, it was impossible to count. Lu Xiaoyi's mission was to persuade them and protect the fox tribe from the invasion of the top cultivation forces, because once such an invasion started, it would never end. Chapter 2098. For Lu Xiaoyi, there were still many things he didn't understand. If the fox orcs were in such a mid-level cultivation state, how could they have made achievements in the heart plate? Yuanying was the best, but how could they make artifacts that could refine immortals and half-immortals? In other words, if it wasn't for the so-called heart plate, but for the great Tao of illusion, then how could they attract the attention of these half-immortals at such a low level? There must be something he didn't understand. He needed to get there as soon as possible and figure out the situation so that he could effectively mediate. Originally, he wanted to deal with the upper-level young spirit on the path of worry, but the heavenly I didn't let him be idle and insisted on playing difficult games while running around. He was already used to it. The northern elephant sky was controlled by the immortal monarch of numinous treasure, but it was the same as the southern elephant sky, except that there were relatively more numinous treasures here. However, the main force of cultivation was still human beings, and this couldn't be changed. According to the heavenly eye's positioning, he appeared in the universe near the Green Mountains, and it would only take a few months of flying to reach there. He was like a flowing light, like a shooting star. Only when he was flying in the universe like this could he feel the most comfortable. He liked the universe, liked traveling, liked being surrounded by loneliness, liked the silence of the dark, liked the different astronomical phenomena that allowed him to feel the mysteries of the universe, and liked to let his thoughts wander aimlessly in the process. His plan was slowly becoming clear. He finally had a direction for the transformation of the innate great Tao, and he was no longer blindly relying on luck. 5 new innate great Taos were definitely not all, and he might not be able to get what he wanted. In the period before the end of the era, there must be other great Taos with potential that would appear before him. However, among these 5 great Taos, the devouring great Tao and the heavenly tribulation great Tao were the core, because only these 2 great Taos could truly overturn the inherent order of the universe's cultivation world and the immortal court system, and truly form a traceable upward passage. This was the healthy direction of the cultivation world's development. At first, such a passage might be very narrow, but it didn't matter. He knew the essence of the change too well. Once there was a crack, as time passed, this crack would become bigger and bigger, and finally become an unstoppable momentum. Under the tide, no power could stop the wheels of cultivation's history. This was what the Crow ancestor wanted, right? It was also what he wanted. Perhaps that was what the Fate Tao Lord wanted as well. As he walked step by step, he deeply felt the potential power of this tide. No one could push it alone, but a group of people were silently contributing, including the Crow ancestor who was forced to descend to the lower realm, including the fate that followed without hesitation. Just as Mubei said, although this force of change was not the mainstream now, it definitely had its core circle. This circle was the true driving force behind the changes in the universe and the change of epochs. To be able to give up their original position without hesitation and do this, he admired the dedication of these seniors. This might also be the true breadth of mind of those ancient golden immortals. And he, Lu Xiaoyi, just happened to be at the right time to add the last piece of the puzzle at the most crucial stage. Glory might belong to him, but the truth would be hidden in history, unable to see the light of day. This was history. People tended to only see the most glorious ones, but they didn't know the nameless heroes of the Great Revolution. A declining young master from a low-level cultivation planet was now standing in a position that could decide the direction of the universe. His circumstances were unimaginable. It was precisely because of this that he deeply felt the responsibility on his shoulders. Nameless heroes had the greatness of nameless heroes, but the people standing in front of the stage had to pay a huge price. If God had chosen him to be the one to carry the big bag, he was duty-bound. Nothing happened along the way. The disputes at the level of supreme yuanying had no meaning for him to participate in now. When you saw an opportunity to be the big boss, of course, you had no feelings for those small bosses. 3 months later, he saw the Green Mountains world. This was a small, bounded domain that matched the characteristics of a population of tens of millions. It was a medium spiritual opportunity environment. Cultivation planets like this were the most common in the universe, because the larger the bounded domain, the more unstable it was. There were very few bounded domains that could be as big as the fifth ring Zhouxian. Most of the large bounded domains that were formed when the universe was first formed fell apart in the long river of time, and finally reached a stable balance when their size was reduced. The Green Mountains world was the same. It could be clearly found that there were nearly 10 similar small planets around the Green Mountains, with the same intensity of spiritual opportunity and the same trajectory. The only difference was that they had no atmosphere, and ordinary humans could not survive on them. It should be the result of the collapse of a big planet. In ancient times, they were originally one. This was the universe. There were too many mysteries in it. The Green Mountains was the only planet with an atmosphere. Among a group of red, yellow, or gray stars, its cyan color was full of vitality and breath of life. There was no busy trace of cultivators coming in and out of the Green Mountains. It could be seen at a glance that even if there were yuanying cultivators here, they were rare. Lu Xiaoyi just glanced at it and knew that there had been no yuanying cultivators here for a long time. As for whether there were half-immortals coming in and out, he couldn't see it. Yuanying cultivators had to work hard to get rid of gravity when they entered and exited the atmosphere. Therefore, such traces of spiritual opportunity would be left in the atmosphere for a long time. For Lu Xiaoyi, it would take a long time for them to completely dissipate. Half-immortals were different. They could pass through such an atmosphere easily without leaving any trace. They only needed a little control of the Tao state, and it was like crossing the back door of their own courtyard. Lu Xiaoyi was the same. After circling around the Green Mountains and learning about the mountains and rivers of this planet, he fell into the atmosphere. Like a feather, he floated in swaying. There was no anomaly and no clouds. The next moment, he appeared in the largest city of the Green Mountains. This was his conclusion after observing around. There were no schools of cultivation here. In other words, the schools of cultivation here were not located in remote villages at all. There were steep mountains. The changes in the strength of spiritual opportunity and the accumulation of spiritual opportunity completely overlapped with those of human cities. This showed that the social system of the Green Mountains was basically the same as that of ordinary people and cultivators. There was no distinction between them. The world of cultivation may also be a management system and a court. This was not uncommon in the various large and small realms of the universe. Generally, the cultivation planets of small and small realms existed in this way. There was no deliberate separation of the bureaucratic system to govern the mortal world and the cultivation system to specialize in cultivation. Instead, they were integrated into one, with each other in the other. For the density of tens of millions of people, such a system was very suitable. Therefore, he could only find the largest city to get the most comprehensive information. Chapter 2099. Landing silently in the city, Lu Xiaoyi was shocked by what he saw and heard. He had been to too many worlds, too many mortal worlds, countless cities. But this was the first time he had seen a city like Qingqiu. It could be described in 3 words: modernized? Of course, it could not be compared to the world in his memory, but there was a hint of it. It was completely different from the urban environment of the cultivation world. The streets were horizontal and vertical. The specifications were uniform. Flowers and trees were planted on both sides, forming a boulevard. Then, there were all kinds of shops and markets on both sides. There were manhole covers at regular intervals. This meant that this city had its own sewer system, which was the first time he had seen in his travels. Everything was orderly, and there were even people helping to direct traffic at busy intersections. Compared to the modern city in his memory, it seemed that the only difference was driving on one side. There were no traffic lights, no viaducts. This was only a rough observation, but his curiosity was piqued. He planned to study this city carefully, and from there, he could determine what role the cultivation world played in this place. After a few days of eating, staying, and strolling, he finally had a general understanding of the city and verified his conjecture. This was a place that was in the process of modernizing. In time, it might not be unable to reach the level he had in mind. Perhaps it was because there was no electricity, no cars, and other key features of a civilization, but there was cultivation world here, and many technological civilizations could be replaced by cultivation world. It just depended on whether the cultivators were willing to put their energy into it. In other places, he saw the opposition between cultivation world and mortal life. But here, he saw a fusion. Cultivation world was not something high and mighty. It was more accepting of the mortal world, and it lowered its status to serve the ordinary. This discovery made him immediately realize where the problem was. Perhaps the cultivators here could not reach the level of half-immortals, but if they used their intelligence and wisdom to research and expand the theory of cultivation world, it was not entirely impossible to come up with something that could replace the dreamlands. Science, to transform the power of cultivation world into the living conditions of ordinary mortals. Cultivation world was not the goal, but a means. He had walked the universe for nearly 3,000 years, and finally, he saw a world where cultivation world was used on the right path. And this domain was actually a fusion of the bloodlines of humans and heavenly foxes. The world is big, and there are all kinds of strange things. But this strange thing happened when you were least prepared. Things had become simple and complicated at the same time. In any case, to him, this was no longer as simple as a mission. A fire seed like the Green Mountains must not be severed. He suddenly realized a problem. Did the Crow ancestor know about this place? If he knew, what role did he play in it? Things were getting more and more interesting. Lu Xiaoyi quickly received the news that the extraterrestrial sage was invited to participate in the Tao worship conference that would be held in Tinya City in a month's time. The invitation method was simple and crude. It was to directly post a notice at the bustling city gate. It was clearly stated and did not hide anything. Tinya City was the city where he was now, and it was also the largest and most prosperous city in the Green Mountains. The Tao Palace could also be understood as the Taoist sect of the Green Mountains, or the court of the mortal world. Judging from the reactions of these natives, they already knew that there were extraterrestrial cultivators here, but they didn't panic at all. Instead, they gracefully displayed the hospitality of a host. Obviously, they also understood the purpose of these quasi-immortals, and even more so, the rules of these people. It was a bit like a bidding meeting. The highest bidder would win. There was a gap between the realms of cultivators, and their status was as different as heaven and earth. For example, a perfected cultivator would be restrained in front of a half-immortal. However, if the gap was big enough, for example, when a foundation establishment Jean Dan faced a half-immortal, then it did not matter. They would just be stubborn. Anyway, they were just ants. What else could they lose? This was probably the attitude of the Green Mountains cultivators. Anyway, there were not many Yuanying patriarchs, and there were many foundation establishment Jean Dan. If they came out to entertain the half-immortals, then there was no equality. The half-immortals could not be harsh. What did you expect the foundation establishment Jean Dan to know? They had not even been out of the universe. What was the point of talking about the changes of the universe and the change of epochs? It was also an unbalanced strategy. The key was that the half-immortals needed help from them. Lu Xiaoyi did not sense the aura of other half-immortals in Tianya City. At their realms, especially those who had a deep connection with a certain realms, they had completely integrated into the natural environment. As long as they were willing, they would no longer emit an aura that made people feel uneasy. Therefore, it was impossible to completely grasp them with a sweep of the divine sense. It seemed that everyone was not very willing to interact with each other. Instead, they wanted to compete directly at the Mudao meeting. What made Lu Xiaoyi feel strange was that for these low-level cultivators, they had countless methods to find out the secrets of the Green Mountains people about the path of illusions. There was no need for them to go through so much trouble. They would lose their status in front of these low-level cultivators. Then, what was the reason for them to be so condescending? Since the Green Mountains people were on Dafa's side, of course he would not be secretive. He directly went to the Taoist palace and stated his identity. He wanted to see the quality of the Green Mountains people. The people of the Tianya Taoist palace were very polite. They even provided him with a foundation establishment guide who was in charge of all kinds of guidance during this period of time. Yes, he did not hear wrongly. It was just a small foundation establishment. In the words of the Taoist palace, the Jin Dan Uncle Masters were very busy. When you were no longer fussing over immortality, no longer worried about the changes in the universe, no longer haggling over the increase and decrease of the Great Path, but instead used your ability on how to use the power of cultivation to improve people's lives and inventions, there was indeed no need to curry favor with the so-called mighty immortals. My name is Bai Shaoshi. If mighty immortals have any questions, as long as I know, I will answer truthfully. As far as I know, the Green Mountains do not have any secrets to the outside world. We treat every guest who comes to the Green Mountains with sincerity and tell them everything we know. Bai Shaoshi was a sunny young man. He was very polite. In his heart, he was not very interested in these so-called mighty immortals. Receiving them would delay a lot of his work, and it was meaningless. However, the Taoist palace had strict orders to be respectful. You could be indifferent to their realm, but they did have the ability to destroy the world. Self was self, respect was respect. A rabbit could not throw a tantrum in front of a tiger just because it pursued self, right? Lu Xiaoyi smiled. My surname is Lu Xiaoyi. At least our names are somewhat similar. Since Shaoshi has told me everything you know, then I want to know the secrets of the Green Mountains dream. Can you tell me? Chapter 2100. Lu Xiaoyi was just joking, but to his surprise, Bai Shaoshi took out a scroll from his sleeve without hesitation and handed it to him. I know you are here for this, so I have prepared it for you. Lu Xiaoyi was a little confused. Everything was prepared for him? The scroll was thin and soft, better than any world he had ever been to. It may not be suitable for long-term preservation in the world of cultivation, and it could be easily damaged, but for mortals in the mortal world, it could be stored for decades. It was a kind of paper, and it seemed to be one of the many inventions of cultivation in the Green Mountains world. As he looked at it carefully, he gradually frowned. He seemed to have understood something. Do you prepare for every guest who comes to the Green Mountains like this? Bai Shaoshi nodded. Yes. Don't all honored guests come for this? So we have prepared the production method, raw materials, process, and mechanism of the dreamland for everyone. If you are interested, I can take you to see the real dreamland now. Lu Xiaoyi was a little shocked. Could such a high road be seen anytime and anywhere? He had seen all aspects of Tianya City for a few days. It could be understood as the prototype of a modern city, but it still needed a long way to go to reach that step. Or was it a special case in the dreamland? Was the intuition of the Heavenly Fox family about the dreamland expressed in another non-cultivation way? He followed Bai Shaoshi around the streets and alleys of Tianya City. It wasn't the Taoist palace that he had imagined. Instead, he came to a place that surprised him. It was a large house that was tightly covered up. There were people guarding the door. After paying, they could enter. It seemed that the cost of living in Tianya City wasn't cheap. Even so, men and women, old and young, everyone was beaming with joy. They called out to their friends and entered in a single file as if it was a festival. Lu Xiaoyi found it strange, but he didn't ask much. Of course, he didn't care about the risk. Bai Xiaoshi's face was full of mystery and pride. He didn't explain much and just obediently paid the money to enter. Once he entered, he felt like he was in a theater. A normal theater would pay attention to the lighting, scenery, fruits, sugar, and tea. There were none here. The seats were next to each other, and it was dark. It was very similar to the cinemas in the world in his memory. That's right, that's the feeling. He had already realized something, but he remained calm and collected. He wanted to see what this cultivation world movie was about. Soon, all the seats were filled. There were people in charge of maintaining order, reminding everyone not to make a ruckus. Then, the last light went off, leaving only the nervous breathing of the ordinary people around. Then, on the pitch-black stage, a dot of light slowly lit up. It was a vast and boundless sea of stars, but it was the scene of the universe that he was most familiar with. Stars, meteors, nebulas, meteorites, and all kinds of simple astronomical phenomena can be seen around the Green Mountains world. They are displayed from the perspective of a cultivator flying slowly. Some are far, some are near, some are contours, and some are close-ups. It's like a lousy photographer shooting a documentary about space exploration. There were even voiceovers that used the simplest and most straightforward language that mortals could understand to introduce these celestial phenomena in the background of the universe. Although there was no story behind it, it was very attractive because everyone had the dream of flying, the dream of seeing the vast universe. No matter men or women, old or young. Combined with the scroll that Bai Xiaoshi just gave him, he completely understood how the fox people used the effect of the dreamland. It was a brilliant way to combine education with entertainment. He hoped that they would not use this thing for entertainment in the future and create a lot of so-called stars. Of course, what was shown in the dreamland was not worth mentioning for a cultivator like him who had been in the universe for a long time. What was worth paying attention to was their method. How could they see what the cultivators saw and heard, record it accurately, and then play it again in the end? This was different from the photostone. The photostone was based on the image left by the fluctuation of spiritual vigor, which was something that only cultivators could understand. But here, there was obviously a conversion process of the dreamland. This process was very clear in his eyes. The mechanism, composition, and process were not specious at all. It was just like a precision machine. Because there was no reservation, the half-immortals who came here were confused and thought that they were reserving something. The reason could only be understood by people like Lu Xiaoyi who had a special memory. That was the difference between science and cultivation. There was a huge gap between them. Science was a rigorous thing. It was clear and unambiguous, without any ambiguity or specious areas. The amount of light, the speed of rotation, the precision of the spiritual strength, etc. These were the characteristics of science. As long as you followed it, you would definitely succeed. No matter who it was, as long as they were cultivators and had spiritual strength, it did not matter if they were in the foundation establishment stage or half-immortal stage. However, cultivation was different. It was an ambiguous and vague thing to begin with. It was also because of this ambiguity that the great Tao appeared to be abnormally high and mighty. It did not have any standards and was completely dependent on the cultivator's free play. In the eyes of 10,000 people, there would be 10,000 results of the Tao of illusions. So, the half-immortal sect was very confused because they could not treat this as the great Tao. It was too simple, so simple that it made people's hair stand on end. It was so simple that they thought there must be something special, hidden, and profound that the people of Qingqiu were not willing to say. This was also the difference between cultivation and science. Science would open up everything and let everyone who was interested to learn. Only then would it be able to make continuous progress. But cultivation was different. If you taught your disciples, you would starve the master. This was the contradiction between the two sides. One side thought that I had already given my all, The other side thought that you must be hiding something. It was so irreconcilable that it could never satisfy the half-immortals. How could these cultivators of Qingqiu understand the great Tao? The highest level of yuanying was only a few. However, the reason Lu Xiaoyi could understand this was because he had that memory. The indigenous cultivators of this cultivation world might not understand. This was something that was completely beyond their knowledge. This was where the misunderstanding was. One side did not have anything to teach, and the other side did not want to leave. Looking at the future development of the world, Qingqiu's model would definitely become the mainstream. The universe would also move from cultivation to science. This was because spiritual opportunity was not endless. There would always be a time when it would be exhausted. From the great Tao to the great Tao, from the great Tao to the end of Tao, this was the ultimate goal of the universe's change. But now, Qingqiu's model was not desirable. It could be popular here, but it would definitely not become the mainstream. This was because it was still in the great Tao era. It was still a long time before spiritual opportunity completely disappeared. Half a step ahead was leading the trend. One step ahead was courting death. For example, Qingqiu's model was countless steps ahead. There would be no other result other than dying without a cause. But he was still willing to protect it. Chapter 2101. Bai Xiaoshi's face was full of pride. Lu Xiaoyi cooperated with him and pretended to be surprised. These cultivators were worthy of respect. Every cultivator who did not just want to live forever was worthy of respect. What a beautiful starry sky. It's exactly the same as when I was traveling in the starry sky, Lu Xiaoyi said insincerely. Of course, it was different. The profundity of the universe was not shown here, but it was enough for mortals. The real meaning of such a dream was not to teach them knowledge of the universe, but to arouse their yearning for the universe. Only then could they double their cultivation and double their efforts. Bai Xiaoshi was as proud as a little rooster, but he was very grateful for this heavenly immortal's welcome. This was because he had received other heavenly immortals before this heavenly immortal, and they had all criticized this dreamlands. The people of Green Mountains knew the gap, but what they showed was technology. Many half-immortals did not seem to understand. When these half-immortals were in the Jindan stage of foundation establishment, did they have such technology? This was the pride of the people of Green Mountains. But this half-immortal in front of him seemed to be a little different. He was very careful and asked about every process in detail. He did not care that it was embarrassing for a half-immortal to ask a foundation establishment cultivator for advice. This really made Bai Xiaoshi respect him. Walking out of the theater, he was surrounded by excited people who were chattering about something. The power of knowledge imperceptibly influenced the people like this, influencing generation after generation, giving them the motivation to explore and seek knowledge. The streets were bustling with people coming and going. The clean and wide streets were slightly crowded and messy. After all, Bai Xiaoshi's temperament was limited, and he could not control his pride. Mighty immortal, such a city is not common in all the realms of the universe, right? Lu Xiaoyi never minded flattering people, even if they were in the foundation establishment stage. It's not uncommon, it's unique. The Green Mountains cultivation world's focus on the lives of mortals should be the role model for all cultivators. Unfortunately, not every realm can understand this. Bai Xiaoshi's face lit up with joy, not necessarily. I wonder what Mighty Immortal thinks of the city's appearance in Tianya City? He was just being polite, but Lu Xiaoyi was too hypocritical. It's already very good. It's just that it's a little messy when there are a lot of people. This is not a problem of construction, but a problem of imperfect rules. If we can make everyone and every car always drive to the right, it should be able to slightly solve this problem, right? Bai Xiaoshi was stunned. Was this exalted immortal a little stupid? Wouldn't it be even more crowded if they all walked to the right? Who should the left be left for? Privileged class? However, this thought only lasted for a moment. After a moment of doubt, he immediately understood. After thinking about it carefully, he felt that this was the best way to travel in the world. Immediately, he prostrated himself on the ground. A mortal's great wisdom is not something that I, a small cultivator, can compare to. On behalf of the Qingqiu people, I would like to express my gratitude to you. I will submit this suggestion to the Dao Palace later. It will definitely improve the traffic situation in Tianya City. The two of them chatted as they walked. At this moment, Bai Shaoshi had finally reached the point where he could tell them everything he knew. A person's desire to talk was based on their perception. No one was willing to have too much interaction with someone who looked down on them, even if they behaved politely. Little Stone, do you know when the changes in your Qingqiu mountain started? I mean, take cultivation as a way to improve people's livelihood, rather than a pure way to live forever? Bai Shaoshi scratched his head. Immortal. How would I know what happened tens of thousands of years ago? It's something that happened thousands of years ago. I don't know much about it. I'm not very interested in history. However, if Immortal really wants to know, you can go to the big study room in Tianya City. There are many books about history there. There should be something that Immortal is interested in. Lu Xiaoyi smiled. Can I? Bai Shaoshi straightened his chest. Of course. In the Green Mountains world, there are no books that are secret. Even the methods of cultivation can be read by anyone who wants to. In the kindergarten, these things are even part of the compulsory reading. Lu Xiaoyi might be the only one among all the half-immortals who came here who was interested in the history of the Foxmen. This seemed to have nothing to do with the illusionary way, but he didn't come here for the illusionary way. Therefore, he was led by Bai Shaoshi to the largest study room in Tianya City, which was also the entire Green Mountains. There were countless books. It was a sea of knowledge. In this regard, the Foxmen had inherited the habits of human beings very well. They even did it more perfectly. Mortals might not be able to finish reading these books in several lifetimes. However, for him, it was just a simple scan with his spiritual mind. He could finish it in a minute. There was no specific time process. This kind of thing couldn't have an obvious watershed when the construction of cultivation in the city began. In the beginning, it always went on unconsciously. Then, from quantitative change to qualitative change, hundreds or thousands of years had passed when you felt the change. After all, people who could live for such a long time were limited. Everyone could only see a small part of the change. What special feelings could they have? However, Lu Xiaoyi still keenly found what he wanted to know the most from countless information. More than 20,000 years ago, a group of outsiders settled here. They belonged to the hibernators. The time and place were perfectly matched. In the records about the crow ancestor, there was also a description about the orthodoxy of the hibernators. In the end, some of them joined the Dome of the Five Rings, and some of them were missing. It seemed that these unknown hibernators were sent here. Only people like the crow ancestor would do such a meaningless thing in the eyes of others. However, for him, there was one more reason to do his best. This old guy was everywhere. He was really good at stirring up shit. He was everywhere, and there were traces of his shit everywhere. He understood what he needed to know in more than a month. During this period, the half-immortals hid themselves perfectly. He didn't meet any of them. He wasn't in a hurry. The possibility of meeting one of them and persuading them to leave was not high. The habit of humans was, either everyone left together and no one could take advantage of this place alone, or they stayed together and he couldn't leave while everyone else stayed. It was good to leave it all to the Mu Dao meeting. As for how to solve it, he could only take one step at a time. How could he plan in advance? He didn't even know who was coming. Although he knew a lot about the construction of Tianya City and more city planning blueprints, he didn't say anything more. In the current cultivation era, it wasn't a good thing to move too fast. For example, the crow ancestor knew as much as he did. However, he didn't say anything. He just let these people explore bit by bit. This was the reason. In the historical changes, the most taboo was to spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. Chapter 2102. Finally, the day came. Under the guidance of Bai Shaoshi, Lu Xiaoyi returned to the Tianya Palace. This time, the palace was bustling with people. All the cultivators of Green Hill had come. A few Yuanying, Almost all the Jindan cultivators, as well as the most outstanding Foundation establishment cultivators, could be said to be the gathering of the elites of Green Hill. Gathering like this without knowing whether they were enemies or allies, there was a high possibility that they would be wiped out in one fell swoop. However, if your opponent was a demi-immortal, there was no need to worry. Even if they all hid, any of the demi-immortals here could find them in a moment and wipe them out. Therefore, they could only bet that the demi-immortals wouldn't do that. They couldn't rely on hiding to solve the problem. There were also hundreds of people in the spacious square in the Taoist palace. They were in an orderly and silent manner. They were obsessed with the invention of cultivation, but they were not fools. They knew how terrible these immortals were, so they did not take action immediately. It was not difficult to make a backup plan to destroy the cultivation environment of the Green Mountains. Lu Xiaoyi didn't pay attention to them, nor did he pay attention to the old Green Hill cultivators. He paid attention to the other 8 so-called guests. Like him, they were all from the inner and outer realm. He was pleasantly surprised to find that there was one of his old friends, Xingjuan Song. He wasn't surprised by the military monk's appearance here. Few half-immortals had a unique understanding of the Great Tao, especially in this era, when the number of innate Great Taoists was still unknown. It was the stupidest thing to do if one was to stick to a dead end. There were also very few people who focused on multiple Taoists. After all, it involved a lot of energy. The competition between demi-immortals was also very fierce. No matter which innate Tao it was, there were a lot of demi-immortals who were gritting their teeth and accumulating energy. The most popular, practical, and creative method was to focus on 1 or 2 Taoists that one was best at, and then find a possible new innate Tao for oneself. Lu Xiaoyi wasn't the only one who was thinking about new innate Taoists. Every demi-immortal was actually thinking about this problem. It was just that they chose different directions. Under the pressure of the change of era, this was the only way to truly keep up with the times. Of course, there was also another group of conservative forces that guarded the 36 innate Taoists. Their forces were more numerous, but that was another matter altogether. Judging from their attitude towards the Taoists, at least those who came here today were all people who agreed that there would be new Taoists after the change of era. From this point of view, they all had the same idea. It looked like the monk was interested in dreamlands. That was to be expected. Buddhists had always been fond of all kinds of enchantments and illusions. They called it the Buddhist kingdom because it was an extreme application of mental energy. Regarding enchantments, Buddhism emphasized the nirvana, Taoism advocated nature, and the heavenly fox's dreamland emphasized the primitive desires and instincts of living beings. There was no difference between them. If a new dreamland Tao really appeared after the change of era, it was very likely that it would be the combination of these 3 aspects. Lu Xiaoyi encouraged the heavenly fox to aspire to the dreamland Tao, but in fact, he wasn't very optimistic about it. Because the heavenly fox race was a demonic beast, it was very difficult for them to accept some views of Taoism and Buddhism. This would cause their dreamland Tao to be incomplete and not inclusive enough. This was the most fatal flaw. Demonic beasts were very stubborn in this aspect. The phoenix's fate was a good example, and humans were the race that was most willing to be tolerant and most willing to learn. If they learned something that belonged to them, it would become theirs. Did humans have traditions? If they did, then it must be, what's mine is mine, what's yours is mine, all good things should be mine. The marching monk's original Tao was nirvana, and now he was interested in the dreamland Tao. It couldn't be said that there was no connection between them. Nirvana was originally a spiritual rebirth, which was very appropriate. However, Lu Xiaoyi didn't feel very comfortable. It wasn't because they were enemies, but when he thought about the future and how the rules were set by the monk, wouldn't it be boring? Would he still be able to race? Would he still be able to let go of himself? It was better to leave the matter of dreaming to himself. He looked at the marching monk awkwardly, as if he was a freeloader at a banquet. The marching monk looked at him even more disgusted, as if he had swallowed a fly. Why was he everywhere? According to the rules of history, this trip to the Green Mountains was going to be terrible. Lu Xiaoyi wasn't familiar with the other half-immortals, but since the marching monk was here, his identity as Enforcer Lu couldn't be hidden. Knowing that the biggest *T stirrer in the main world's cultivation world had come, the half-immortals present didn't look too good. Could they still have a good dream? Since he was here, they might as well take things as they came. Dafa Lu greeted his fellow Taoists one by one. Although these half-immortals felt disgusted, they didn't show it on their faces, as if they had all been good friends for many years. He was Enforcer Tian Mao, the only enforcer currently in office under Tian Mao's system. Although he didn't have any actual power, his appearance made people's imagination run wild. Could it be that Tian Mao had some attitude towards this matter? This was everyone's question. Lu Xiaoyi was a kind person, so he didn't hide it and directly warned. Tian Mao sent me here because he was worried that some unpleasant things would happen in the Green Mountains. It's not wrong to pursue the Great Tao, but it depends on the method. At present, everyone has the demeanor of a Shangxian, so I hope to maintain it. I'm a pacifist, so I don't want to use weapons the most. If you can solve things with your mouth, don't use your hands. I think you all don't want to leave a bad impression in Tian Mao, right? The marching monk was angry. How dare he threaten them in public? He treated them as nothing, deduced the motive of the crime, and threatened them with it? But this guy stood on the righteous side, so they couldn't refute him. We've been here for at least 10 years. Has anyone in the Green Mountains been affected because of this? Threatened? Changed? Fellow Taoist Lu, you've only been here for a month, but you're already so arbitrary and deduce the guilt. Could it be that the sin comes from the heart? You do things according to your temperament. The heart is dirty. We have our own bottom line about the Green Mountains, so there's no need for Enforcer Lu to remind us. He spoke very impolitely, but Lu Xiaoyi didn't care. He had been stirring *T for a long time, so he didn't care about it. Hee, that's good. After doing dirty work for a long time, you can't avoid having a pair of dirty hands. You're all Taoist experts, so don't let my dirty hands touch you. How much ability do you have to say such things? If it was someone else, they would directly find a place to teach him a lesson. Who would be lazy to talk nonsense with him? But for Enforcer Lu, no one dared to teach him a lesson. How many years of bloody experience did he have? In the half-immortal realm of the main world, if you wanted to say who was the most ruthless and had the most resentful souls in his hands, it would be none other than him. Now that he had the backing of Tian Mao, he had the righteous cause, there was really no need for that. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.